All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Non-Victim Nation podcast. I greatly apologize because it has been a little while. We had to move into a new facility, so we have a new podcast studio here. It is a little bit different than the one that we had, but it's a work in progress for sure. But all that aside, I have to introduce my very good friend Josh Logan, who is one of my favorite human beings on the planet, and somebody that I've worked with for quite a long time. He is the owner, along with his wife Karen, of Guardian Training and Consulting, and here we go.
Thanks for having me. I
I,
appreciate it.
you know,
Cheers. It's
um,
it's an afternoon. We're not drinking in the morning, so I
exactly.
just want to make sure we're
Five
good on
o'clock somewhere.
that.
Right? So yeah, it's been about a year since our last podcast episode.
Sounds about right.
Um, and obviously a lot has gone on since then. For people that aren't necessarily familiar with you and with Guardian, I was wondering if we could kind of like do like a little bit of a timeline, like
Sure.
kind of where you started with your law enforcement, and then you moved into Guardian, and kind of how things have gone since then.
Yeah, so I retired. Well, I started Guardian. I'll back up. I met Karen around that 2016
Hmm.
time frame when we worked at a local gun range. So I was an instructor at a local gun range. I worked there as an instructor. Karen came along, and I worked at, I think before that, uh, probably six or seven different training companies while I was still a cop. So at the time I worked for the Chandler Police Department. I was just, a road cop, worked the streets my entire career. Um, and then went through the police, my career. And then after that, during that time, I worked for other companies, from different ranges. I think I've worked for every single range in the East Valley. So worked at different ranges kind of as an instructor, and then was working at this range, and then I met Karen.
Hmm.
Obviously, we started teaching together and realized there's like a lot of chemistry, professionally speaking.
Hmm.
There's a lot of chemistry, and realized that she could reach certain demographics better than me, such as
Hmm.
women.
Right.
It's not that, I can't teach women.
Hmm.
It's just going to come from a different point of view with my wife.
Right.
And then why am I going to teach the bearded dude's going to teach a woman how to concealed carry who I've never been a woman. I've never dealt with the complexities and the differences of that, as well as why would I do that when my wife's a former federal air marshal?
Right.
Like she's the queen of concealed carrying on airplanes and stuff like that. So, and then, there's certain demographics that are more difficult for women to teach. Like
Hmm.
walking into a room full of knuckle dragging Neanderthal SWAT dudes,
Hmm.
that's a tough crowd. It's a tough crowd for even any woman, much less any person, much less a woman. And so we realized we can, and then teaching guy classes, most of them are guys. So it just, it's not that she can't do it. It's just, it's an easier reach.
Hmm.
So we just realized we could really play off each other's, strengths and weaknesses. And then of course, then there's the romantic, chemistry. Fell in love with each other over a Glock 17. That's a true story, by the way. I bought the brand new Gen 5 Glock, and I wanted her to shoot it. Obviously, she loved it, and she shot better than me, and
Okay.
she did a better 5 shot group than me. And as I was pulling out my man card to punch it and get my man card punched, I realized that was insanely hot.
Yeah.
I dated it and eventually married it, and
Right.
happier than I've ever been. But it was funny, and Karen's gonna kill me for saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I don't give a shit. I'm a big dog right now, but when I get home, I'm gonna take out the trash. So when she was never a Glock girl,
Mhm.
and I just carried Glocks for most of my entire career, and it was a Glock 17, so a full size gun. And she's like, "Man," I said, "if she shot it really well," I said, "Well, I think you found your gun." She goes, "I know, but it's like it's so big,"
Right.
and I'm like, "That's what she said." And she was wearing a red shirt, and her face
Mm. Yeah.
quickly turned the color of
Yeah.
her shirt. She goes, "Oh my God, I completely embarrassed myself in front of this hot young stud." And then eventually that so uh, fast forward, that was about 2016. We left the local gun range on good terms, and we started Guardian in 2018,
Mhm.
and it was literally like on a napkin kind of thing. It was like, what are we gonna do? Like we're what? And I worked, and I realized it took only half of my life to realize I don't work well with for other people,
Mhm.
but I really work well with other people.
Right.
And we are thinking about, okay, let's go look for a job at a, another range or another training company. I just realized, like, why don't we just do it on our own? Like, what? And she's like, what are we going to call this? I'm like, well, I like Guardian because it's because I'm a really word centric person. You know that.
Mhm.
Hunter knows that. I'm a very word centric person. So I actually looked up the Webster's definition of what a Guardian is.
Mhm.
And what we did not want to do because of all my experience dealing with other, you know, companies, was there's the firearms guy, and then there's the medical training company, and then there's the defensive tactics, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and everything's very pigeonholed.
Mhm.
Well, and Hunter knows, and most of the viewers here know, is it's a is you know preparedness,
Mhm.
right? Is a very holistic approach,
Right.
right? And so being prepared for the unknown, right? Should you know medical? Should you know at least some modicum of medical training?
Right.
Should you know situational awareness?
Mhm.
Should you know, if you do wish to carry a firearm, what the laws are of self-defense, so that you don't end up on the wrong side of the law? Should you know how to, like, if God forbid you have to shoot it, how to line up the bumpy things on top of the slide, commonly referred to as sights, and press the trigger? Should you know if how to physically defend yourself if
Mhm.
that's what you want to do?
Mhm.
So we realize that there's more than just the firearms, right?
Right.
I mean, you're a firearms instructor, Hunter's a firearms instructor, a USCCA instructor, and but we know that USCCA is more than just firearms, right? It's concealed. You guys are technically, like me, concealed carry home defense fundamentals certified instructors. Thank you, USCCA, mate, for making it difficult like that. Like, holy buckets. So,
Right.
but it's concealed carry and home defense
Mhm.
fundamentals, and that's not just shooting somebody in your home.
Right.
That's doors, locks, windows. So when back to the whole thing. That's why we're like, the name has to be very deliberate.
Mhm.
And and no offense, I'm sick of Spartan helmets. I'm sick of Molon Labe. I'm sick of all of that, right? It's
Mhm.
just, to me, it was just done like dynamic and combatives and solutions and the all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
It's like, you know, warrior, and it's like, okay, stop, right?
Right.
That d- that doesn't, appeal to everybody,
Right.
right? And so, okay, let's look up what a guardian is. And it's a protective mindset.
Mhm.
It's being prepared. It's taking care of other people. Um, you know, when I got into law enforcement, and there's that argument, especially after the 21st century in policing, are police officers warriors or guardians? And to me, it was just a very semantic
Mhm.
driven driven thing, and obviously, it's politically motivated
Right.
by events. But it's like, okay, I was a guardian as a police officer, right?
Mhm.
My job was to protect people. That's the way I swore an oath,
Mhm.
and I sacrificed a lot in my career because I cared for the greater good.
Mhm.
And so that's when we was like, okay, we're going to call it guardian, but we can't just call it guardian, right? We have to, it has to describe what we do.
Mhm.
Okay, so we do training and we do some consulting as well. So from a perspective of, now I do expert work in the legal world. So we want to make sure it's broad enough, but it's not watered down,
Mhm.
but it's not pigeonholed, so that what we don't want to be pigeonholed into is, oh, you're the gun people,
Right.
or you're the gun people, right? So when we created the image, we created the logo in a very deliberate way. Some people say it looks like wings. Some people say it looks like hands.
Mhm.
And the center's left blank because that's why you are the hands, or the the wings, and the center's left blank because that's why you become a guardian.
Mhm.
Whether it's your family, your friends, your community, your country, whatever that case may be.
Right.
It's a personalized thing.
Mhm.
So that's when okay, let's create the company. Karen and I own it. Let's create the company and start training people.
Mhm.
And when we were like, okay, when early 2018, I was still a cop. And like, okay, we have curriculum coming between my wife and I. We have almost 40 years of law enforcement experience
Mhm.
and military experience. So we have gobs of curriculum through all of our years of doing it. And we were going to do like an intro to pistol and intermediate pistol. And I'm like, no, 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 that where we developed it, put it on the website, our first website that looked like I think an eighth grader can make a better website. Our first website and our first logo
Right.
was absolutely horrific. So this is not our first logo.
Mhm.
It was like a G, a cursive G, and then a T and a C, and then it had an angel wing on it. And then one of our friends at the time said it looks like a mullet coming off of a G, and I could never unsee that ever again. I'm
Nice.
like, and that I think that lasted. I still have some shirts. It's like the OG shirts. Maybe we get so huge that we'll sell it for like, oh
Right.
my God, that's the original swag. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't have any illusions of grandeur of that, but it's so then, yeah, we're like, well, we're going to build all these different curriculums. And then I just realized that's what like local gun ranges do.
Mhm.
Like they have an intro to pistol, they have a, intermediate pistol, and a lot of other training companies have a lot of different classes.
Mhm.
And I just realized we're gonna do this different.
Mhm.
We're gonna teach people,
Mhm.
not curriculum.
Right.
Obviously any kind of professional, legally defensible training has to possess curriculum.
Mhm.
But what we're concerned about is the people.
Mhm.
And so I steal a lot from the corporate world, fair and square. And one of the other things, the other paradigms we talk about is not only we teach people, not curriculum, but also I just straight up steal the Mayo Clinic's mindset.
Mhm.
And the Mayo Clinic's mindset, which again, they're always the top rated hospital, year in and year out. It's like
Right.
Johns Hopkins or Mayo Clinic.
Mhm.
But their saying they like to say is the needs of the patient are the only needs considered.
Mhm.
So we just adopted and said the needs of the client are the only needs considered.
Right.
Right? It's not my needs or wants. It's our we are a service based organization.
Mhm.
So we said we're gonna teach people, not curriculum. We're going to the needs of the client are the only needs um, considered. And then finally, we're going to be a concierge-based training approach.
Mhm.
So we're going to have that that personal touch to training instead of training 25 people in a class and on a firearms on a line. I've done it. I mean, I worked for other companies where you have 25 students on a firing line
Mhm.
and there's only two instructors.
Right.
And to be honest, it's scary as hell.
Yeah.
There's no amount of whiskey and Xanax that can alleviate that anxiety because that's like 25 people, that's
Mhm.
50 hands,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's got all 10 fingers. I
Yeah.
mean, you can see that there's a lot of room for error and a lot of room for something that bad happening.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times they do that is it just comes down to straight up greed.
Mhm.
Because it's we're minimizing expenses by not having to pay so many instructors while maximizing revenue, right?
Mhm.
But in my experience, and I think you can even attest to it, and Hunter from the military side, the ex- the the customer experience, the client experience degrades significantly
Mhm.
when they don't feel that personalized touch. They just feel like they're going through the motions, and what are we doing here? Like we're
Right.
just you know, I like to call them ballistic masturbation. Like you're just hearing the gun go off
Right.
and there's no results in that end. And it's just in what we call naive practice.
Mhm.
And so so grounding that whole thing out. That we said we're gonna take a different approach than C2 Tactical. Like we use C2 Tactical as a range. We have a great relationship with C2. They have their own training department,
Mhm.
so they actually have their own director of training and their own instructors, and we're not competitors to them.
Mhm.
It's a symbiotic relationship with them because we need a range, right? We need a range to do our firearms training. But what we purposely wanted to do when we partnered with them um, was to say, like, listen, we're not competition to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, do we have concealed carry classes? And they have concealed carry classes. But I
Right.
don't teach my concealed carry classes at C2 Tactical.
Right.
I teach them across the valley. But there are certain curricula that they just don't teach.
Mhm.
And then for our private lessons just have a different flavor,
Mhm.
right? It's apples to oranges.
Mhm.
Apples aren't better than oranges. Oranges aren't better than apples.
Right.
But if you want orange juice, you're going to squeeze an orange.
Yeah. Right.
If you want apple juice, You're gonna squeeze an apple.
Right.
You're not gonna squeeze an orange and call it apple juice. And so it's that. So that was the approach that we did, and it's worked well for us.
Mhm.
Of course, there's always been a struggle bus, owning your own company.
Mhm.
Own your own company, they said. It'd be fun, they said. Own your own company with your wife some days. I think we've dissolved.
Mhm.
I think Karen and I have dissolved during arguments, Guardian. On paper, we've dissolved it like 6 or 7 times, I think, in our marriage and
Right.
all that. On paper, we get an argument, write up the dissolution papers of the company, and then the next morning goes right to the shredder. And we're like, I'm sorry, babe. Usually it's
Mhm.
me saying sorry.
Right.
And then I have to say, you're right. And she
Mhm.
has this shitty grin on her face. Um, and I go take out the trash.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so that was 2018. We got married in January of 2020.
Mhm.
Got married in January 2020, and my last day at the Chandler Police Department was the last day. I think it was January 30th or 31st
Mhm.
of 2020. So my first day as an entrepreneur, 100% entrepreneur, was February 1st, 2020.
Okay.
And then what? A month later,
Mhm.
not even 4 weeks later, like 3, 4 weeks later, this thing, I don't know if you heard of it, it's called COVID. COVID happened and exploded.
Mhm.
And so it was scary. I mean, that not from a perspective of COVID, but owning your own business that requires in-person training
Mhm.
with all the government mandates, and I'll leave it at that.
Right.
Just the silliness. Let's just call it for what it is, silliness
Mhm.
that the country went through. And it was scary, man. Like, cause my last paycheck was March 1 from the Chandler Police Department.
Right.
After that, I wasn't getting a paycheck anymore.
Mhm.
And it was scary, man. And because it was all in, there's none of this dip your toe. And it was like,
Mhm.
it's like, all right, head first right into it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was tough. 2020 was tough. And, I worked with another training company, and consulted with them as well. I traveled a lot, honestly, during COVID. I was in and out of my Pelican case, living out of my Pelican case for every other week, damn near, for almost 2 years,
Mhm.
and then left that consulting with the training company, and everything's good. Then, and I guess what now, 6 years later
Mhm.
or so, here we are,
Right.
and I'm back, and
There
uh,
you go.
and we're a year later from the first
Mhm.
podcast we did with you.
Yeah.
So
So part of the reason why I kind of wanted to cover that um, is because there are a lot of people that start companies or they start businesses, and we had talked a little bit before we started recording about people that we've had experiences with.
we talk a lot
The
before the recording.
yes, we did.
We almost had a podcast before the podcast. That was completely off the record, right, Hunter? Okay.
But people generally start like a business with a concept idea in their head, and unfortunately, a lot of times they're so locked into that idea that they don't make room for where that company is going to go or the potential of like expanding it beyond that scope, right? And I'm not sure
How
that
so? How so
necessarily.
in that regard? Like they
So,
don't leave enough room. Elaborate
um,
on that. I'm curious how.
so a friend of mine, he had started a company that was a credit restoration company, right? And it was an excellent idea. He had the framework and how to do everything with the company,
Mhm.
but it was a very isolated kind of idea as far as like, well, once the thing is up and running, it's like, okay, then what? Then what's the next thing after that? Like, how do we expand this into a bigger organization or make it a more profitable company, or how do we grow it? And unfortunately, it never reached a point where it was able to go to that next step, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not necessarily because he had a bad idea or because he didn't think forward enough. It's just that
He's not
it
a bad
didn't.
person either, right?
No, no, not at all.
Great person.
Um,
Sure.
he's exceptionally intelligent, and in a lot of other aspects, other
Mhm.
businesses, things that he's done, he's had great success, right?
Mhm.
But in this one particular venue, he just there wasn't enough forethought, I don't think, about okay, so once we reach this stage, what comes after that? Like where's the next thing, and how do we expand
You're
beyond that
talking about
scope?
vision. You're
Right.
talking about vision,
Yeah.
right? So what I'm hearing
Hmm.
is what I hear a lot. Being part of the Fountain Hills Chamber, right? We're proud members of the Fountain Hills Chamber of
Hmm.
Commerce. That's where we live. Karen's on the board of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. And sometimes me and Betsy Lavoie, she's an amazing individual, full of energy. And her sole job is to make businesses like us that are
Hmm.
Fountain Hills based successful. And,
Hmm.
and, and the insatiable energy she has, she's an outstanding person. But we've gone, not 12 rounds, I'd say one round. You know, because she kept calling us a small business.
Right.
You're a small business owner. You're a small business owner. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm an entrepreneur
Hmm.
who owns a business. If you believe you're a small business, that's exactly what you're going to be,
Right.
a small business. And what you were describing, that individual is a small business owner.
Hmm.
And I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. Start with Why, Know Your Why.
Hmm.
Great books, by the way. And it just insatiably from a leadership perspective
Hmm.
and an entrepreneurial perspective. But he says it the best. If you're a small business owner, you own a business
Hmm.
and you're just a business. If there are a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs
Hmm.
solve problems. So
Right.
entrepreneurs don't own businesses.
Right.
They solve problems and they own a business as lack of a better terms, it's a conveyance.
Hmm.
The small business, the business is a conveyance for them to affect that
Hmm.
relief of somebody's pain or problems.
Right.
So we're problem solvers, right?
Hmm.
And that entrepreneurial spirit,
Hmm.
which we call the visionary, right? Um, every visionary has an implementer, right? So you have the visionary. Let's use Steve Jobs for example. Steve
Hmm.
Jobs, amazing visionary, right?
Right.
Who did he have to implement? Steve Wozniak,
Hmm.
right? He had the Woz. So um, I think, and it was Thomas Edison, I think, said it is um, dreams without implementation are just hallucinations,
Hmm.
right? So you dream of owning your own business, but you do nothing to go on implementation,
Hmm.
right? Um, then you're just hallucinating at the moment, right?
Hmm.
And then you wake up and you're like, I don't own a business
Right.
because it was hallucination.
Hmm.
Um, so visionaries without an implementer, right, are just dreamers,
Hmm.
right? Um, what you're talking about is an implementer, right?
Hmm.
Owning a business and implementing it, but there's no vision.
Hmm.
You kind of have to have both.
Right.
Usually it's not one person. It should be not one person. And a great example is Karen and I.
Hmm.
I'm the visionary of the company. I'm not saying I'm Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and that, but I am the one that okay, we're gonna do this, and it
Hmm.
may or may not work, but we're gonna do it. And I'm the
Hmm.
crazy idea guy,
Right.
and the visionary. Like we're gonna pivot, we're gonna pivot, we're gonna pivot.
Hmm.
And poor Karen, she's amazing. Like
Hmm.
has to deal with my stupid ass ideas. Hey babe, I wake up one morning, we're gonna buy a simulator.
Right.
What? We're gonna spend how much? We could buy a Super Duty truck for the price of that.
Right.
And I had the lane brain idea. And so then Karen then has to go about, right, implementing that.
Right.
Okay. Where can we find the revenue? Where can we find the capital for that? Because
Hmm.
we're not doing venture capitalists. We're not doing investors for
Hmm.
Guardian Trade Consulting. We own the company,
Hmm.
period.
Right.
Right. And it's not about being a totalitarian leader. Right. I
Right.
mean, our team, right, has tons of input on our direction,
Yes.
but I have the final say.
Hmm.
Right. And I don't want to be beholden to investors that don't see my vision
Hmm.
because all they want to see is what?
Return on revenue.
Money, right?
Yeah.
Money. They want to see money. And not every aspect of our company is money driven. I
Hmm.
mean, let's get real. Why are we in business?
To make money.
To make money.
Right.
Because we are a business. We are a for-profit company. But I always tell people just be just we will never ever
Hmm.
if it's under my reign,
Hmm.
uh, we will never trade passion and purpose for profit.
Right.
So our passion and purpose will always be at the forefront. If we remain ardent, you know, guardians, let's use
Hmm.
that word, ardent guardians of passion and purpose, profit's a byproduct of that.
Right.
And we realized that through, again, back to that whole business scheming when the beginning,
Hmm.
was we're going to create a company that's totally different than any other training company.
Hmm.
And it's about the client. It's not about me. It's not about I see a lot of training companies. It's a lot of megalomania. Let's just call
Hmm.
it for what it is.
Right.
A lot of narcissism, megalomania, and it's about certain characters in the film. And we are like, we're going to be focused on the client. We're
Hmm.
going to be focused on helping people. And that servant, that servant heart is going to continue. But how are we going to get the client to divest themselves of money, right? and the most important resource, time,
Right. Right.
right? Time away from their families, time away from their jobs, time away from their lives to come train with us.
Mhm.
And the only way, and time's the most valuable commodity because the one common thing all of us in this room have with Jeff Bezos, even Elon Musk, and those types of people is we still have 24 hours a day,
Mhm.
right? Elon, I don't think has figured out the time machine thing yet.
It's a work in
Yet,
progress.
yeah, I'm sure he's got something, right? And hopefully he
Right.
doesn't use the damn DeLorean. He's probably gonna use a Tesla car
Yeah.
for the time machine.
Right.
So so the they have, we still have 24 hours, right?
Mhm.
Our bank accounts look viably different, but
Right.
but so how are we going to get them to divest themselves of money and time and to believe in what we do?
Mhm.
It's they have to see what we care, and we truly do.
Mhm.
It's yes, we are a for-profit company. We do make money. Um, there is an expense of our expertise because we've
Mhm.
spent a lifetime,
Right.
lack of better terms, a lifetime honing the skills that we provide,
Mhm.
so that they can hardwire that we can then hardwire a curriculum for a person to move from where they are at
Mhm.
in their preparedness journey to where they are, where they want to be in the most expeditious route possible.
Mhm.
Right? Makes sense.
Right.
So, like, for example, all of us, like, it's so if I lose my job right now, if I lose this career and everything like that, the only thing I'm qualified to do is be a very well armed, very well spoken Walmart greeter. Like, I can't work on my truck. I can't do shit around the house.
Right.
Like, I'm not a handy person. It was weird. Like, I can asking me to rewire like that switch over there. I have to turn this whole like electricity off, and
Mhm.
electricity scares the shit out of me because I
Right.
can't see it
Mhm.
and you get zapped. Um, so like can I rebuild my engine and my truck? Yeah. And
Mhm.
given the sheer amount of time, how many
Right.
times am I going to mess it up?
Right.
Resources, all of that.
Mhm.
If I don't have the time, the expertise, the resources to do
Mhm.
so, what do you do? Hire somebody.
Right.
So it's going to take me a month probably to rebuild my engine or more,
Mhm.
right? But if I ask, an auto mechanic to rebuild a diesel mechanic to rebuild my engine, it may take one fourth of that time
Right.
because I'm not paying them for their time.
Mhm.
I'm paying for them for their expertise
Mhm.
to get it done so that it takes less time.
Right.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different mindset. But like,
Mhm.
but back to your friend, it's just I hear that a lot.
Mhm.
And they're we call them solopreneurs.
Mhm.
Like they're just happy being on their
Right.
one man band,
Mhm.
and they're awesome.
Yeah.
There's so many companies that are like the one man band
Mhm.
concepts. Um, but if you truly want to scale training, if you want to
Mhm.
reach more people to affect change, right,
Mhm.
and to truly help, you have to scale.
Right.
Because like today, right? I mean, how many back and forths do we have just to schedule this,
Right.
right? It's tough. You have
Mhm.
lives,
Mhm.
you and Hunter have lives, and I have a life, and
Mhm.
you have careers, and I have a career. Like it, and there's a lot of moving parts. I mean,
Right.
because if we didn't schedule this today,
Mhm.
right, I don't think I'd be available until like February. It's just because
Yeah.
it's nuts, and it's like, and I'm not. I hope it doesn't come off as complaining or whining. I mean,
Mhm.
I could complain, but who's going to listen anyways? But it's a good
Right.
problem to have
Yeah.
because we could be out of business,
Mhm.
right? And there were some times during 2020, man, it was like, dude, clients ain't coming in.
Right.
How are we going to make this?
Mhm.
Right? It was scary, but it's I see that a lot, and I'm not saying I'm some. I have the whole reason I'm here and doing what I do is I've stood on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
I have and I still have amazing mentors.
Mhm.
I've had and still have amazing friends.
Mhm.
You guys, like
Yeah.
you said, like you were my like how many? We probably spent an hour or more talking before the podcast,
Right.
right? I
Yeah.
cleared my whole day. I didn't have any. I purposely didn't have anything on this day because I want to spend as much time with you guys because I love it.
Yeah.
It's not work. We're talking about work.
Right.
We're talking about Guardian. We're talking about the future,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I didn't feel it was work. I mean,
Right.
I could be wrong for you guys. I don't want
Mhm.
to speak for you guys, but I love hanging out with you guys, and
Yeah.
we need more of that fellowship, right?
Absolutely.
With men, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's not meant to offend or anything like that,
Mhm.
but men need to hang out with men, and um, we call it proxemics in like business development. If you're in proximity with successful people
Mhm.
and people that have high moral fiber, you only have one choice. Well,
Right.
actually, you have two choices. You either rise to that level
Hmm.
or you leave.
Right.
And I love hanging out with guys like you and
Yeah.
Hunter. It's awesome. So
Yeah. So a lot of why I kind of wanted to start from that point is that to emphasize the idea that like it's one thing to say that you have an idea and you're capable of doing something. Like you easily could have said, "Okay, I'm done with law enforcement. I'm really good at training and I'm really good at communicating. I'm going to teach people firearms instruction." And been the most outstanding instructor there ever was
appreciate
and
it.
focus just on that, and that could have been your entire career. It's like, but there's so much more that you're capable of beyond that scope. Because not only are you good at like doing the instruction yourself,
I'm not telling him. I didn't pay him to say this, by the way. But continue.
so not only are you excellent at like doing the instruction yourself, but you're also excellent at developing other people to become those sorts of instructors themselves also, right? And so you have not just created a a business that you and your wife are doing. You're creating an entire organization and in training other people, you're bringing people into this organization so that it can expand and it can become something greater.
Yeah,
And so you have moved beyond just like, I'm going to teach you personally how to shoot a firearm, or I'm going to teach you how to be faster, more accurate, whatever. You've moved into the realm of like, not only do you train us and other people, how to be proficient, intelligent, and communicative, like be able to do the same things that you do,
sure.
you've actually moved into the realm of like, now you're training other law enforcement agencies across the country.
Across the
And
world now.
sometimes, what's that?
Across the world now. The
Yeah,
last conference.
yeah, other
Yeah,
countries, you've expanded to that scope because you have that vision and because you're capable of doing that, right? And because you recognize that that's something that you are capable of doing and that needs to happen,
mhm.
right?
Yeah,
There is a need for that,
it is.
right?
That's I would say desperate need.
Yeah,
I would say desperate need for
you
sure.
know. And so, it's obvious to anybody who's paying attention, the world has is in a much different place than it was 50 years ago, you know, even 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And not all of it, in fact, most of it is going the wrong direction. And it's up to people like you that have the capability and the potential to make changes that will actually move the needle in the better direction,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
To help do that, right?
yeah,
And the whole concept of being a guardian, that that concept boils down to, you know, even the most minimal level, right? I, as a father, right, it's my responsibility to protect my family.
mhm,
Okay. It's, you know, any parent's obligation to protect their children and their family and the people that they care about, right? Those are things that, like, that isn't limited to just law enforcement. It's not limited to just, you know, somebody who feels like they've been assigned a job or an obligation, where that's what they're supposed to be doing. Every single person has that obligation to be a guardian of themselves and the people that they care about, right? And
exactly.
so everything that you're doing is for that purpose. It's to help people understand that you're capable and that you can do these things, and these are the ways that we're going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And so yeah, it's empowering, right?
Yeah.
That's what. So when people ask me, I actually have some other business owners ask me, because like you said, I'm a USCCA training counselor,
Hmm.
and in English, what that actually what that actually means, is I train the trainer. I certified you guys as instructors,
Hmm.
and I certify a lot of instructors around this valley, right? Like
Right.
I had 7 instructor candidates in my class last weekend that
Hmm.
are now minted as USCCA, United States Concealed Carry Association,
Hmm.
instructor certified instructors. And I've had a lot of people ask me like, "Wait, you're literally creating your own competition." I'm like, "That is such a small mind,
Right.
right? It's such a small mind. Like they're not my competition."
Hmm.
And I hope that doesn't come off as a superiority thing. It's they're not my competition
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, rising tides raise all ships.
Hmm.
That now these USCCA instructors, and I train a couple instructors from other ranges,
Hmm.
right? So they're not only so technically they could be my competition. So now I'm doing instructor development. They're hiring me on a private basis to help their instructors become better.
Hmm.
And when they're like, "Oh, Josh, can I steal this?" I'm like, "You can't steal it." And they're like, Okay." I'm like, "Because you can't steal what I freely give you.
Right.
It's not theft if I'm giving it to you."
Hmm.
And so but then when they realize that when they get better, they always, in a respectful manner, they always know where that came from,
Hmm.
right? And that it grows our influence. I mean, let's just be real. Like I don't have any um, illusions of grandeur,
Hmm.
but I do want my profile from a perspective of my professionality to expand.
Right.
And that was that literally what you see right now is my dad. My dad was one of the smartest men I knew. An amazing communicator. He was a radio DJ for country stations for 25 years.
Wow.
So literally this was my dad's life.
Right.
And I was the kid picking my nose in the corner, picking my nose in the corner with the headphones on,
Right.
listening to my dad on a 50,000-watt radio stations.
Hmm.
I played football backstage with Randy Owens of Alabama.
Hmm.
And then I realized when I became an adult, I'm like, holy shit, that's Randy Owens. Yeah, he's like, yeah, he played football with him as a kid backstage with Randy Owens. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, you wouldn't have known. He's just a dude.
Right.
He's like the lead singer of Alabama. I'm like, but it's so my dad was a master communicator. My dad held me to very high standards. Like when I was like in fifth grade, my dad was like doing proofreading my papers, like red penning the fuck out of my stuff. And I'm like,
Right.
Dad, I'm in sixth grade. He goes, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
You will be a great communicator,
Hmm.
right? Because to be successful, you have to be able to communicate.
Hmm.
And if you the better you can communicate, the more articulate you are, the more people will take you seriously,
Hmm.
right? I have my moments of monosyllabic four-letter words, and sometimes Karen's in the back like, "Yo, yo, a little too many f bombs, a little too many of that."
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try to keep it 100% professional. But
Hmm.
it's that was my dad,
Hmm.
and that was hugely influential on me. And then another mentor of mine, I asked, did such amazing things for me, opened doors that honestly I didn't deserve, much less probably should have been in.
Hmm.
But I was there anyways,
Right.
and either you rise to the occasion or you tap out,
Hmm.
and I just the latter is not an option. So I asked him, I said, how do I ever repay you for what you've given to me? He's like, I didn't give you shit. You earned it for the
Hmm.
most part. I'm like, okay, roger that. I said, so how do I repay you for all this? And he goes, do it for somebody else.
Hmm.
Do it for others that I've done to you. And I took that to heart. And that was 25 years ago, man. It's 25 years ago. And I took it to heart. And now I'm like, okay, I've dedicated my whole life. And one of my favorite quotes
Hmm.
is from Vince Lombardi. And he says, the quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor.
Okay.
Right? And that's my life quote.
Right.
So what my dad provided me when I was a kid, and as an adult, and I became a man, and the insane talent that my dad provided me, rather
Hmm.
genetically and also, what is it? Nature versus nurture, right?
Hmm.
My nature and a nurture my dad gave me, and then the insane mentors that I had, that mentor specifically,
Hmm.
and then developing a life quote for my life. The quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor. And nothing could be truer than that.
Hmm.
My dad straight up told me, he's like, if you want to be a ditch digger, I will support you 110%,
Right.
but you better be the best damn ditch digger
Right.
you ever had.
Hmm.
And so then for me, when I started this company, I was like, you know what? You know, the USCCA asked me if I wanted to be a training counselor, and at first, my first thinking was, oh shit, I'm going to create my own competition, and
Hmm.
I had to sit down with like Brian, for example, our director of business development at Guardian. Brian is he's an insanely awesome person.
Hmm.
He'll give a shirt off the back that big, it's going to be a big shirt. He's a big Goomba from from uh,
Yeah.
from Jersey, and so but he's like, that is so small minded. Like you have now the chance to influence.
Hmm.
Now it's exponential, right?
Right.
Because now these instructors are going out and teaching
Hmm.
10 students, right? And that other instructors teaching 10 more students,
Right.
right? And all that knowledge comes back to it can be all uh, you know, broken down and reduced to one aspect of that.
Hmm.
And it was huge. And now I'm training like that. Like I was at the International Association of Law Enforcement Fire Instructors conference, annual conference I taught at it, my shooting and speed efficiency, and I had 60 law enforcement officers all day.
Hmm.
So I had 30 in the morning and 30 in the afternoon, and I had 6 guys from Taiwan, like 4 guys from Germany, like 2 or 3 guys from Belgium, some are Australia, and all across the country, right? And all
Hmm.
levels of law enforcement from
Hmm.
federal, state, and local. And then I had all of my international students. I mean, my Taiwanese guys were speaking Mandarin, so like I had to have a translator. They had to have a
Right.
translator to that's one to me like for me it's like man I made it
Hmm.
and it feels good. I mean, from a self-serving perspective, it feels really good to do that because now it's like, okay, my beliefs, Josh's beliefs, Guardian's beliefs, and our way of doing things, lack of better terms, is
Hmm.
is now reaching uh,
Right.
far and wide.
Hmm.
And I just got the invite to teach at ILETA, which is International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association. This is every aspect of law enforcement learning. So this is not just firearms. I'm teaching a firearms class,
Hmm.
my shooting and speed efficiency class, but I've never attended this conference ever.
Hmm.
And the first year I'm attending it, I'm teaching at it. It's just such an honor.
Hmm.
And the only reason, honestly, the only reason I got into that was because one of the board members, a couple of board members took my class, I was already proven, I was vetted, and
Hmm.
it was those networks, it was those connections that I made with those people,
Right.
and they're just amazing people. It's not me, it's them. They're
Hmm.
amazing people, and they're opening doors for me. That I'm like, wow,
Right.
it's real. But like you know, Elite is huge. I mean, you're looking like thousands of attendees, and so
Hmm.
this is report writing, expert witness testimony, driving,
Hmm.
um, every aspect of law enforcement training,
Right.
not just firearms.
Hmm.
Um, so I've had some huge opportunities as of late, and it's just been I've been blessed.
Hmm.
I think this year is gonna December
Hmm.
is gonna end. I'm gonna end up just like I was last year, December. There's gonna be a lot of ugly crying ringing in the new year for 2025. Looking back on 2024,
Right.
on how blessed I was. A
Hmm.
lot of ugly crying, like really ugly girl crying, like because I'm just so blessed. Like I'm
Right.
just gonna be crying
Yeah.
in my bourbon or my champagne, and
Right.
it's another good year because we have
Hmm.
some good things coming for 2025. But it's 2024. It's my vision has been moving slower than I want.
Hmm.
We're moving slower than what I desire. We've made huge strides. I mean, from in a very short amount of time.
Hmm.
But I'm an impatient person by
Right.
nature. People are like, Josh, why don't you have patience? I'm like, patience? Those are the people you call in the hospital.
Yeah.
Those are patients. Oh, you're talking about the virtue? Yeah, I don't possess that.
Yeah. Right.
But it served me well. It didn't serve me well in the government service.
Yeah.
That mentality. I was very. Uh, I was. If you go into any of my old former units,
Hmm.
I'm like the Yankees. They either love me, they fucking hate me.
Right.
I'm a very divisive, polarizing person
Hmm.
by nature, and I tried to curb it, and I tried to change, and I couldn't.
Hmm.
And so that, but everything that all the damage that I did, lack of better terms, when I was in that career, by
Hmm.
having an entrepreneurial spirit now is being rewarded to me when I am an entrepreneur and a business
Right.
owner. I'm happier than I've ever been in my
That's
entire
good.
life. It's great.
Right.
Right.
So there is a definite value that I think that you're bringing to those organizations and the people that you interact with. That we've talked about this in the past, like even in the last podcast that we had. We talked about the lack of just overall training and education that most law enforcement has, right?
Yeah.
Because it's sort of that same idea. It's like in a bureaucratic machine, you can't do anything other than be the cog that you are in that machine, because otherwise it throws everything else out of balance for what they want, not what is actually best.
Hmm.
Okay, and those are very distinct things, right? Um, so it's there are so many things, so many you can watch video after video of like all of these incidents and all these things that happen. We talked about this in the last episode too, that like, the woman that had been in the force for 26 years,
Hmm.
you know, thought she was drawing a taser, but actually drew a firearm and killed somebody. You know, there's a distinct lack of actual training for the people that need that training the most, right?
Exactly.
Um, so these are things that need to change. And it's so easy for people to look at a video and say, well, they should have done this or they should have done that, right? And you even pointed this out. There is an expectation that law enforcement is supposed to be perfect, right? Without the perfect training to back that up. Okay, those two things don't match, right? You
Right.
can't have one without the other. Okay, if you're only going to give them the most minimal training and then expect them to do the most exceptional job, that's beyond ridiculous,
Well, because every aspect, whether it's law enforcement or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What we're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
like communicating with English and putting sentences together and everything like that, that's not innate.
Right.
You weren't born that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a learned behavior. And so like drawing your gun from a holster is a learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But some people will say, well, it looked innate. I'm like, well, it may look
Mm-hmm.
instinctual and innate, but it's a completely learned behavior.
Right.
It's something you have to learn, right? You have to learn English.
Yeah.
My
Well, that.
dad red penning my I know I may seem like I have PTSD from it. I've got some daddy issues with that,
Yeah.
but I hated it.
Yeah.
But it taught me, and it took what? Training.
Right.
And I didn't get to where I'm at, right? I didn't get to where I'm at without training.
Right.
And I had to divest myself of a lot of time, a lot of my own time
Mm-hmm.
and my own dime, right? To get where I'm at.
Right.
I didn't rely on the department to train me
Yeah.
because for the most part, a lot of these department trainings, they're not good.
Mm-hmm.
Karen is a licensed realtor.
Mm-hmm.
She has more continuing education requirements
Right.
than law enforcement in the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
A barber has more training than law enforcement.
Right.
There's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
And when administrators, and I'm blessed, I have Jody on my team.
Mm-hmm.
Like freaking Jody Weiss, who was the former superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. So when these chiefs go, you don't understand what it's like, Mr. Logan, because you were never a chief of police. I'm like, you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
I do not possess that that uh that perspective. But sitting right next to me in the same colored, same polo is none other than Jody Weiss.
Right.
And I go, and Jody's on our side. So
Yes.
like Jody is on like our side. I mean, from a and I don't we talked about this. I don't like to get political, but sadly, law enforcement training and law enforcement, the job is now a political thing,
Right.
right? Because it was made political,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now I have on my team, I have Jody freaking Weiss, who is the chief of 13,000 cops.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, he was a special agent in charge of the Philadelphia field office of
Right.
the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got perspective.
Yes.
And now we have an ally and he's so we're I love Jody because him and I are diametrically different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gregarious, I'm very outspoken, I
Mm-hmm.
have the gift of gab. I have all those different traits, and Jody is the exact opposite.
Right.
Reserved, professional,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I would never ever think to have a bottle of a glass of bourbon, even though he likes his bourbon,
Right.
would never ever think to have a glass of bourbon while
While
talking
having this
about it,
conversation, yeah.
right? And it's not because he's a fuddy duddy. It's he possesses everything I don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I possess things that he doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he asked me the that he wanted to come work for me,
Right.
I'm like, right, where's the camera? This is a joke.
Yeah.
Ashton Kutcher's coming in and
Mm-hmm.
doing, you got punked. I'm like, absolutely. Because
Mm-hmm.
so when we go talk to chiefs and I go, I can just step out of the room now,
Right.
right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
can talk your chief words, like to use the word transparency and and professionalism and like all those cool words, right?
Right.
I'm just a beat cop. But Jody, like told you in there, he never worked the beat. He
Mm-hmm.
was an FBI agent and then he was a superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
So he never did what we did.
Mm-hmm.
So his viewpoints have changed
Mm-hmm.
since meeting me on a lot of different topics. I'll leave it that to because I don't want to speak for Jody, but his view on police leadership has changed
Mm-hmm.
since meeting me
Right.
and our team.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge, right? Because he's seen the highest levels. I mean, his friends, some of his friends and associates are the most powerful men and women in law enforcement. The
Mm-hmm.
chiefs of likes of NYPD and LAPD and every town in between.
Mhm.
And I respect that,
Mhm.
because the only way we're going to affect change in law enforcement is to be professionals,
Right.
right? And to show people that not only what this is what we can do, this
Mhm.
is what we're going to do,
Right.
right? And we're here to help you.
Mhm.
Why does this have to be adversarial,
Right.
right? Because I have to remind police departments, like, listen, I don't want, like, I'll sit aside across the, like, the director of training or a training sergeant, training lieutenant, and they'll have their arms crossed and go, why do we need to bring you in when we have a training department? It's like, listen, I don't want your fucking job.
Right.
All those files that you have to manage and training files and compliance and all that, I don't
Mhm.
want it.
Right.
So listen, if you think I'm here to take your job, you're sorely mistaken.
Mhm.
I want to come in, be a consultant,
Mhm.
because I get to say what I want, when I want, how I want,
Yeah.
right? And I've told chiefs no. And I've told commanders they're being silly as a consultant.
Right.
And like, you can't talk to me that way. I'm like, I don't work for you,
Yeah.
right? I don't work for you. I mean, I do. I want to work with you, but
Mhm.
I don't work for you.
Right.
And all I'm trying to offer is solutions to problems. And yes, there's a money aspect to it,
Mhm.
but you get paid for what you chief, you get paid for what you do.
Right.
Like, and this is all I do now. I don't have a side gig. And so when chiefs are typically not used to being talk that way. I mean,
Right.
Jody will tell you. He's like, oh, just the way you talk to chiefs is they're not used to it. I'm like, I know.
Right.
But if we want to get to the heart of the matter, sometimes we have to, right?
Mhm.
So if you get burned, right,
Mhm.
you have a really deep burn.
Mhm.
What's the first thing they do? And you have a shirt on, right? What's the first thing they do when they get to the hospital? They pump you full of antibiotics and they cut into that burn,
Mhm.
and they call it debriding. So they cut into that. So is that causing you more pain? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it injuring? Yes, it's actually injuring you. But if that skin flap goes over top, then you'll get an infection, and then
Mhm.
you get sepsis, and then you die.
Right.
So they have to cause more pain
Mhm.
and more injury,
Right.
right? To literally flesh out the problem.
Mhm.
And so we have to have these difficult conversations.
Right.
And why wouldn't we want to have these conversations behind closed doors,
Mhm.
right? Make me sign an NDA, right? But in a professional setting, not in
Mhm.
the court of public opinion, not in the media, but
Mhm.
have very, very frank, candid conversations,
Mhm.
right? And go like, this is the bill that needs to be paid, not
Right.
not from just a monetary perspective. This is a bill that you have to pay. You have to have your officers come in and train,
Mhm.
and that's what's going to cost you. And it
Right.
and so because we can't demand excellence from them if we don't train them. Professional athletes spend their entire lives just to get into the pros.
Mhm.
And then how many people, I mean, what's the cutoff for like NFL, college, right? So from high school to college, huge cutoff, right? To get into college. And how big is the cutoff from college to NFL? Freaking huge.
Right.
And then how big is the cutoff to win a Super Bowl?
Mhm.
It's huge. So like you're talking about like that much,
Right.
right? But they've devoted their entire lives in training,
Mhm.
right? Except that the sad thing is, like, I've trained professional athletes. They're in a multi-billion dollar, right?
Mhm.
Like, Dallas Cowboys, like, I think they are the most valuable professional sports team in the entire world. I think it's like 2 point something billion dollars.
Okay.
Do they balk at a $10,000? Do they balk at like a $10,000 machine?
No.
No, right? Like, so if I come to you, you're Jerry Jones, right? You're the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, and I go, hey, we want to bring in a consultant for $10,000, $50,000, $100,000,
Mhm.
and we can guarantee quantifiable results that our guys will run, point 0.2 or point 0.1 faster on their 40s,
Mhm.
right? And they'll jump like 2 extra inches, and they'll lift heavier or make better decisions. What do you think Jerry Jones is going to do? Write the freaking check. Actually, he's not going to write the check. Sorry. He's going to go write the check. Because
Right.
Jerry Jones don't write no checks.
Right.
He has an assistant that writes the check, right? He snaps
Right.
his fingers and gets it done.
Yeah.
And but they don't balk at that because it's all about performance. Because
Right.
the better the team performs,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
More fans,
Right.
which means more what?
More money.
Money.
Yeah.
More money. right? And it's
100%.
that's a reality, right?
Yeah.
And so and then you want to build a state of the art stadium like
Mhm.
AT&T Stadium.
Mhm.
What does that cost?
A
A
lot of
lot of
money.
money.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a fan base,
Mhm.
where are you going to get it from?
Right.
Well, we can get it from taxing. Really?
Mhm.
You're going to piss off a lot of citizens that way.
Right.
So you gotta bring it up. So going back to the whole law enforcement thing, it's like we need to have that conversation.
Mhm.
And it's great having the guys like Jody. And then I have all these law enforcement guys in my team that are from so many different backgrounds,
Mhm.
from SWAT to public safety on campus to school resource officers, and it's crazy.
Mhm.
Precision rifle, like Mark Spicer's doing a contract with us in Huntsville, Alabama, sniper contract, and it's just like it's sometimes I have to look around and go, holy shit! Like it takes sometimes somebody going, I researched your company, I looked online, and I read your about us,
Mhm.
and when you go out about us, first thing before ever see any of us, the actual Webster's definition of what a guardian is,
Right.
and then our team. And she's like, it read, and a lot of so many people say this to me. I read your about us, and it's like the literal dream team.
Mhm.
Like you have like the dream team. Like remember that was it 93 or
Right.
90 where you had Michael Jordan's. Like
Mhm.
I have the Michael Jordans on my team. I have a whole team of Michael Jordans, and uh, and so it's insane. It's great. It's a blessing. So
Right. So, kind of on a different note, that we have reached a point in our country where there is so much going on that things have never been in my entire lifetime, never been more political in every facet of our lives than they are now, right?
I agree.
And law enforcement is really in the top percent of those things that are like scrutinized and politicized, beyond belief,
Oh yeah,
right? And so, kind of going back to what we said earlier, it's like there is an expectation that law enforcement is supposed to be perfect in all of the things that they do, right? But they're not. They're not being provided the training that they need. They're not being provided the resources that they need, and they're not being provided with the the authority to do the things that need to be done. Because in a lot of places, especially like the bigger cities, LA, New York, Chicago, right? They're so driven by their agenda and by the things that they want
sure.
people to see or they want people to think, that they're not doing the things that are actually beneficial for the people and for to keep people safe, right?
Right. Well, and the biggest problem is if you look at like sheriffs, right?
Hmm.
So Sheriff Mark Lamb, great friend of mine.
Hmm.
I love Mark. Mark is he's a true patriot
Hmm.
my personal opinion,
Hmm.
and I can say my professional opinion as well.
Right.
He's a true patriot, and
Hmm.
he's just he's a insanely smart man.
Right.
Um, you know, he has a very great public image, like from a perspective of his image.
Hmm.
And he runs a great department.
Right.
His guys love him.
Hmm.
It's funny story. Like I saw him at Shot Show this January. I'm walking down and I hear Josh Logan. I look over. I'm like, Senator, how are you? Sad. It was a little. Maybe I jinxed it. But
Hmm.
I saw Mark and he was with Kyle Rittenhouse. And
Hmm.
so we were talking and uh, and I said, hey, just so you know, like whatever however the whole Senate race kind of pans out. And we did some a contract with Mark and the
Hmm.
Pinal County Sheriff's Office. And before we did that contract, I had a 2 hour meeting in his office.
Hmm.
Karen and I, 2 hours with like he took out of his whole day,
Hmm.
and we just had great conversation. It wasn't just business; it was our beliefs and where do we want the country to go, right? Even though I'm not in that space, but it was important. And so I said, hey, just so you know, Mark, like whatever happens with the Senate race, I did a lot of research on you
Hmm.
when you became sheriff. He goes, really? And I said, yeah, because in my experience, right, across chiefs and chief executives, usually if the chief or the chief executive sheriff, whatever that chief executive is,
Hmm.
if they present well to the public, they're typically bad for their cops.
Hmm.
And if they present well to their cops, they're typically bad for the public,
Right.
right? It's a, I said, but you come out and you're this pretty cowboy right? He looks very good. He's just well spoken. He just his whole image is great, awesome, right?
Hmm.
But then I'm like, and I know his background. I mean, he was a Salt River cop. He was a gang cop. I'm like, that dude was in the trenches.
Right.
But it changes. I mean,
Hmm.
they become chief executive, and now all of a sudden they have their own cars and their entourages, their bodyguards, and they forget
Hmm.
where they came from. I see it.
Hmm.
And I said, I did some research on you. And he's like, really? I said, oh yeah, you just you look too good. You're too clean. You're too clean.
Right.
Right. And I said, you have you so I believed in my heart of hearts and mind of minds in
Hmm.
that moment that you're screwing your guys,
Hmm.
that you're bad for your cops. So I called 5 to 6 pipe hitting, meat eating Pinal County sheriff's deputies that are like me, that
Right.
are that just love to go out and chase bad guys,
Hmm.
right? Which doesn't, it doesn't meet the feel good policing, like the TikTok videos and the 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 handing out sticker badges. It's
Right.
dirty, nasty, violent work.
Right.
And that's what needs to be done to get our most dangerous predators off the streets,
Hmm.
right? To keep our community safe. It's an ugly business. And sometimes things happen, right?
Hmm.
Accidents happen or whatever the case may be. So I called him up and I said, hey, what's the deal with this Mark Lamb guy? And he's like, what about him? He's the boss. I'm like, give me the straight dope. He's messing with somebody, right? He's changing the whole culture. He's screwing over the guys, right? He's not a cop's cop because he looks too good on the news.
Right.
And he goes, no, dude, this real dude's a real deal. I'm like, what do you mean real deal? He's like, the dude is a real deal. He shows up on traffic stops. He he'll he'll direct traffic. He'll do the most menial police work
Hmm.
and help his guys out. He helped them get pay raises. He helped them get equipment. And I'm like, how the hell did this guy figure out what kind of pill did this guy take? Or like, like he figured it out. He
Right.
figured out the how you can be almost universally loved by
Hmm.
your your community
Right.
and almost be universally loved almost. I mean, you're never going to be loved by everybody,
Right.
but almost universally loved by your cops, by your guys.
Hmm.
Mark did it.
Right.
And I wish we could bottle it. And and if Mark watches this, I'm going to send it to him. I'm going to text to him when it gets posted. I'm just going to cut it and just give it to him. But the reason why I want him to listen to this is because at the end of the day, he needs to go on a traveling road show and
Hmm.
teach this to police executives on how to, like a case study.
Hmm.
Mark Lamb, the case study, how to figure out how community policing works with freaking putting bad guys in prison
Hmm.
and taking care of your cops,
Right.
right? That because that's what a good chief executive does.
Hmm.
So he needs to bottle it and he needs to go out and teach these chiefs,
Hmm.
these sheriffs that that this is what it takes.
Hmm.
Now the difference is the sheriff is elected, right?
Right.
He or she is of the people, while police chiefs are not.
Hmm.
They're appointed, and a lot of people don't realize is they're an at will employee.
Right.
So that means they can be terminated. Why are we terminating the chief of police? Because it's Tuesday. There you
Right.
go. Pack your bags.
Yeah.
And so a mayor or a town council or city council can fire that.
Hmm.
So they're in a rock and a hard place. So sometimes they have to make decisions that are not popular with their cops
Hmm.
because of some politician,
Right.
right? Wants to grind an axe on somebody's head,
Hmm.
and there's really nothing they can do about it.
Hmm.
Like I've heard of police executives having to fire an employee, a police officer, after a use of force incident because if they didn't, they would have lost their job. So they said, we're going to terminate this employee and then we're going to bring him back and
Okay.
then he'll get back pay. I'm like, you see how asinine that sounds?
Right.
But again, it's tough. I don't, I, I only see it from the outside and I only see it from secondhand by way of Jody, but
Mhm.
Jody's told me some stuff and it's like, dude, that's an insatiably tough job.
Right.
But but at the end of the day, that's what you sign up for.
Hmm.
Sorry, you want to wear the 4 stars and the chief and you want to have a, I'm the chief of my company.
Hmm.
Right? I'm the one that makes the decisions on where we're going.
Right.
And there's really nothing the guys can do about it.
Hmm.
Right? It's like it's my if we're gonna teach something and I say no, we're not doing that because it's illegal and more unethical or it just doesn't make sense, then they don't have any recourse to do that.
Right.
But they also have another recourse to just everybody back, you do your own thing.
Right.
And so you have to be magnanimous at some point. If you're in a leadership position, you have to be magnanimous at some point.
Right.
But at what stake?
Hmm.
Like when do you draw a line? Not in the sand,
Hmm.
right? I'm not. I hear that all the time. I'm gonna draw a line in the sand. Don't ever do that
Right.
because how easy is it to move that line in sand?
Hmm.
You need to draw that line in wet concrete and let that shit dry.
Right.
That's your line,
Hmm.
right? And at what point do we say enough is enough, right? I'm just gonna say it. Like I don't, you, we talked about. I'm not gonna get political,
Hmm.
but because I don't, there's things I don't that our company does not have a political stance on
Hmm.
because that's why I hate Nike.
Right.
Like just sell shoes,
Yeah.
sell your slave created shoes, and 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 just shut up,
Right.
right? And then I had then I've have had other businesses in the firearms industry, right, saying let's go Brandon and F Joe Biden, and I'm like
Hmm.
you're just as much of the problem
Right.
on the other end of the game than Nike. So like I did my talking, right,
Hmm.
quietly
Right.
in a voting booth this November,
Right.
right? And who I voted for it doesn't matter, right? Because that's Josh, not Guardian.
Right.
I'll train anybody that wants to be trained as long as
Hmm.
it's not illegal and moral and ethical. It doesn't. I'm not going to train somebody to overthrow the United States,
Right.
and I'm not going to train somebody to kill to assassinate somebody,
Hmm.
right? Those are obvious things, right? But if somebody from the other side of the aisle
Hmm.
that may have never wanted a gun in their life, or may
Hmm.
have been anti-gun in their life,
Right.
or maybe they are anti-gun
Hmm.
and they just want to learn how to shoot a gun. Why would I turn that? Why would I turn away that opportunity? Not for making money,
Right.
but to be an ambassador,
Hmm.
right, for that moment.
Right.
Because do you think they're watching us?
Always.
110%.
Yeah.
They're watching this,
Hmm.
right? They could be watching this, and anything anything I say can and will be used
Yeah.
against me.
Right.
It's I
Yeah.
have the right to remain silent, but I just can't do it. Um, so it's if I was spewing all that stuff,
Hmm.
then would we ever have a chance for let's just call it the other side, the person on the other side of our beliefs,
Hmm.
right, to ever even think about coming towards us and
Hmm.
maybe putting their walls down and learning something from us?
Right.
Never, right?
Hmm.
I see it.
Yeah.
I'm like, just stay away from it. Like,
Hmm.
and it's not because I'm trying to play both sides or get them out, but like they're still humans, right?
Right.
Um, open borders. I think it's a flawed idea. Straight
Yes, it
up,
is.
it's a flawed idea.
Hmm.
Like it's for me. Everything has to be data driven, or it has to be based for me and for Guardian. Everything has to be based on data,
Hmm.
and or it has to be based on a sound logical argument.
Hmm.
And where we have that for me, I go right back to the Constitution
Hmm.
because that's the founding document of our country,
Right.
right? And even the Declaration of Independence before that, right?
Hmm.
1776. So because that was us telling the king, you can go F off,
Right.
right? We're committing an act of treason,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then the beliefs of Locke and Thomas Paine and all those individuals
Hmm.
has to be based on that because to me because if you go outside of that, now
Hmm.
we're into feelings,
Right.
and when we're in feelings territory, it's so subjective,
Hmm.
right? And I have to tell people like fuck your feelings, like this is fact.
Right. Yeah.
This is fact.
Hmm.
And I don't want to. I know that sounded really harsh and really coarse and unprofessional, but sometimes you just have to come to that. Like, listen,
Right.
your feelings are moot about
Hmm.
that. It's like when I teach my concealed carry class, people are like,
Hmm.
"Well, I don't agree with that law." Okay,
Okay.
still a law.
At the end of the day, it's still a law, huh?
Even you just saying that
Yeah.
made no impact,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So how do you make that impact? You vote in the legislators that
Right.
you agree with
Hmm.
and viewpoint, and you get the law changed.
Right.
But your feelings on the matter by saying it,
Right.
you're not going to change my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, when has anybody ever won a Facebook argument?
Yeah. There's no such thing.
When people comment on our stuff, like, comment on our Facebook and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
they get a little negative, I'm just like, the way I think about it in the back of my head, I'm like, thanks for the engagement. The
Yeah.
algorithm loves it.
Right.
Just put it right to the fucking top.
Yeah.
So I can start like once they start spewing that, I'll just start posting thumbs up
Hmm.
because I learned the algorithm
Yeah.
right through marketing is if you interact with them, then they interact with you, and then you interact with them and they interact with you, and it just gets more engagement.
Right.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
And so bad news is good news, and good news is good news.
Hmm.
Right. But it's still
Yeah.
what? News.
News.
And
Right.
I had an old lieutenant told me, don't ever fuck up on a slow news day. And um, so it's just like going back to the whole thing is we just have to have those difficult conversations
Right.
with I go again going back to politics. I mean, I think the nation
Hmm.
spoke.
Hmm. Absolutely.
The nation spoke,
Hmm.
and it was people that, and I think a majority of that silent majority that I don't have to fly this flag. I don't have to put the sign. I don't have. Where are we going to? What is the one place you can remove all feelings and do the loudest speaking?
Hmm.
In the polling booth.
Yeah.
You walk in, right? You walk in, you check in,
Hmm.
you grab your ballot very silently.
Yeah.
You go to that, you mark what you do.
Hmm.
You put it in the envelope, throw it in there, whatever your voting process is. You get your sticker because you have to post it on Facebook that I voted.
All right.
Okay. And then you don't see anything.
Hmm.
No bumper stickers on your car.
Right.
It's and
Hmm.
like again, like my sister-in-law is a different is of a different political beliefs.
Hmm.
And one time we were talking till like 3 a.m. over whiskey and debating.
Right.
And at no point did the F word get spewed at each of us.
Right.
It never became personal.
Hmm.
And we just agreed to what?
Disagree.
Disagree.
Yeah.
But we saw it from each other's perspective,
Hmm.
understood it, empathized it, didn't agree with it, but
Right.
I could see it from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's missing.
Hmm.
That I think is viably missing in our country.
Hmm.
And it's having those tough conversations.
Right.
Whether that's politics or whether that's police leadership or police training or gun rights,
Hmm.
right? Or, whatever that case may be, our not our constitutional rights, it's our God-given rights.
Hmm.
That's what people get really messed up. It's our God rights that are given to us by God, not the Constitution
Right.
or the Second Amendment,
Yeah.
right? We don't get our rights from the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment just tells the government you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it says shall not be infringed. Now, as an expert in the legality world, that's a that's a no discussion, no discretion, no discussion.
Right.
That is a what we call a bright line rule in the
Hmm.
in the legality world.
Right.
I think it says somewhere in that Black's Law book. Oh yeah, it does. So it's that's where it's not my feeling anymore, right? So now I
Hmm.
can say, well, those are rights given to us by God, and people are like, I don't agree with them. Like, you don't have to. They're like, oh, that's your opinion. No,
No.
that's there's a document. There's a
Right.
document that said that somewhere,
Yeah.
right? There's a document that says that somewhere,
Hmm.
and they want to get in a constitutional argument. I'm like, just tell me then tell me if you want to argue with me on constitutionality. The first thing I want to ask you is cite your source, right?
Hmm.
What's the first part of if you have a source citation, right?
Hmm.
Here, taking you back
Yeah.
now,
Right.
right? APA, right?
Yeah.
I know Hunter's like he's twitching over there. So on an APA guideline, what's the first thing in a bibliography, like a citation? What's listed first? The author,
Right.
right? So the author, and then the date it was published, and then the title of the
Okay.
publication, and then all the where is the publisher and all that. So
Hmm.
I was telling him, okay, so if you want to go into the Constitution, tell me who wrote it. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington.
Right.
I'm like, the majority writer was James Madison. Oh, I didn't know that. So you're about to enter a debate with me
Right.
on a document in which you don't even know who wrote it.
Right.
Is that where we're starting? And they go, I think we're about done here. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Let's have another drink.
I thought so because like
Right.
that's where you're at, right?
Hmm.
And so like that's not my opinion.
Hmm.
That's the founding document of our country.
Right.
And then there are two U.S. Supreme Court, like for example, like the right to possess firearms.
Hmm.
right? The right to carry firearms,
Hmm.
right? Is a constitu is a con it's in our Constitution,
Right.
right? But those rights are given to us by God
Yeah.
as delineated by the Constitution, right?
Hmm.
And codified protection from the
Hmm.
government under the Second Amendment,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
That's how it's actually worded. And then we have this argument about it, and I'm like, what are we arguing about?
Hmm.
And then we have two U.S. Supreme Court cases that have interpreted that, right?
Right.
Right? The District of Columbia v. Heller, right? And the Bruin case.
Hmm.
So District of Columbia v. Heller says it's a constitution, it's a protected right
Right.
as delineated by the Constitution to possess firearms, right? And then the Bruin case is it goes further with Heller and says that you have the right to bear arms on your person for personal protection, i.e.,
Hmm.
concealed carry.
Right.
That's what eliminated the may issue states
Hmm.
like California,
Right.
like New Jersey, like those states that were may issue, that you had to go into and apply for a permit, and you had to sit down with a deputy and they could ask you that one question: why do you wish to obtain a concealed carry permit? And the one answer that was not correct was, I wish to protect myself. That was not a valid reason. So you have an organization like the San Diego County Gun Owners Association,
Hmm.
right? Working with FPC, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and
Right.
you have a guy by the name of Jim Miller, right?
Hmm.
Miller v. Becerra, right?
Right.
Jim Miller, I got to meet him at the gun prom we did. We worked with amazing individual, an attorney. He's the plaintiff on one of the, the leading anti-assault weapons, the assault weapons ban and magazine bans.
Hmm.
And John Dillon, who's the attorney for FBC, one of the smartest, scariest individuals I've ever met. Super humble. I would not want to be in that man's crosshairs, but he knows more about constitutional law in his pinky than most scholars ever know.
Hmm.
And he'll come after you after you're an attorney,
Right.
but he's on our side. And so
Hmm.
like, and that's amazing,
Right.
right? And then going back to the whole thing, like that's showing the world that we're a professional organization. We're a professional. Our profession as firearms instructors and everything like
Hmm.
that is a white collar expertise driven career field, such
Right.
as that of an attorney, such as that of a doctor, a physician,
Hmm.
right? Because we don't get, like yesterday, I was on the rifle range.
Hmm.
It wasn't physically demanding work.
Right.
Like I wasn't roofing, I wasn't, laying asphalt.
Hmm.
I was standing on a range offering my expertise to these guys with the AR-15s. Now, is it tiring on my feet and sunny? Yes, sure.
Yeah.
But it's not physically demanding work.
Right.
I'm not getting paid as much for what I can do. I mean, somewhat with my hands, but
Hmm.
like shooting a gun is not physically taxing compared to swinging a damn hammer,
Right.
right? So because of that, right?
Hmm.
Shouldn't we act like the people that, right, that
Hmm.
that don't do that, like doctors and attorneys, they're getting paid for their expertise,
Hmm.
right? That's the thing. But the going answer your very simple question, a very long-winded answer, which is my usual uh,
Here, Emma.
proclivity. Uh, that I think that's where we rounded out to the
Right.
discussions that we have to have.
Hmm. Yeah. So part of the reason why I brought up the whole political thing is because, like I said, things have never been more political than they are now in every facet of our lives, right?
Yeah,
And law enforcement is just one of those things where they're being scrutinized constantly for the things that they do, but nobody's looking at the other side of that whole thing, right? And so I'll kind of start from the other end of that. Okay. So Hunter at one point had sent me a video of like it was kind of like a satirical thing, right? Of this dad walking into a room talking to his teenager and saying, hey, did you clean up your room? Because, I asked you to do that a little while ago, and we had a conversation about it, and and he's being very uh not political, but he's being conversational and you know
diplomatic.
yeah, diplomatic. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good way to
magnanimous. Yeah.
explain the
A
things
little
that he
beta, a little beta, a
yeah,
little beta
what he
esque.
requested and what he expects, and yet there's not the execution of those
Sure.
requirements or that request,
Sounds like a word
right?
salad.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so he's talking in this long-winded saying, of saying,
Sounds like
"Hey, I
drugs.
asked you to do this and you haven't done it, so please get around to doing it, let's
Sure.
make this happen." Right? And then you have he's kind of repeating the scenario, but he's going back like generations of like how they would do it,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And so this is like kind of the most current generation. The one before that is saying, "Hey, I said you need to do this. Make sure you do it, and we'll call it good," right? The one before that is like walking into the room. It's like, "Why isn't this done?" You know, tell you what, give me your fucking PlayStation. We're doing this now, right? And the one before that is the walk
I'm gonna
dad.
call the police on you.
The dad walks in and he's talking and he's kind of patting his belt, and the child is like saying, "Hey, hey, I'm cleaning my room. I just went to the bathroom. I'm getting it done." It's like it's like, there's a generational expectation and perception of how things are supposed to be,
Sure.
that has happened over time, right?
Yeah.
Parents aren't the same way that they were 50 years ago, right? And you can say that's good or bad, whatever, okay? However, the
It's
way that
different.
people
It's different
respond
for
to
sure.
things now is not nearly the way that it used to be, right? So now you have people that, and I watch video after video of people that are getting pulled over or interacting with the police, and they're completely disrespecting them, because A, they don't fear the consequences of what's happening, and B, because they've been taught over time that the police are our enemies and that they deserve to be disrespected, right?
Yeah.
So these things are happening, right, in a political sphere, and it's being taught in our education system that, the law enforcement are not always the good guys, that our country is systemically racist, that there are all these things that are playing into that and why people react with police the way that they do, right? And so it's making their job much more difficult on an everyday basis than it actually needs to be.
Yeah.
I watched a video that Brian had sent to me of this officer talking to a guy who had his hand in his coat, you know, within arm's range, okay? And within striking distance. So when I say that, I mean fucking close enough to
Yeah.
shake hands with somebody,
Bad breath
right?
test.
You know, and he said, "Hey, I'm uncomfortable with you having your hand in your coat like that." And the guy said, You're uncomfortable," and he immediately pulled out a fucking knife and started stabbing the police
Oh,
officer,
yeah.
right? And so, those sorts of things, that's the place we've come to in our society, right?
Yeah, because you have a third one, like the third paradigm that because you mentioned the aspect that they just hate law enforcement. People weren't raised right,
Hmm.
by the parents.
Hmm.
And then the hatred of law enforcement, the shift in viewpoint of law enforcement from
Hmm.
9/11,
Right,
where they're lauded as heroes, and then 10 years later, after Ferguson, vilified.
right.
There's a third one as well. It's the misinformation,
Hmm.
where you have these YouTube experts, self-proclaimed experts, um, coming on YouTube and mass media as quote unquote experts, misinforming people.
Right.
Like, oh, you don't have to roll down you only need to roll down your window that far on a traffic stop, and then you get to play the whole "I'm not driving, I'm traveling" game. You don't have to tell the police your name. You don't have to stop if you'd reason to believe that it's not a cop. It's misinformation.
Right.
And the scariest people that I deal with, right, in law enforcement and in the training sector and just in life, are not the ignorant people.
Hmm.
Because what is a definition of ignorance? You don't know, but
Yeah,
you
they
don't
just
know.
don't know.
You don't
Right.
know, right? And so, but if I call you ignorant, Rico, you're probably not going to appreciate that, because in the English language we have a negative connotation to
Right.
it. But when you look at the word and the
Hmm.
meaning behind it, is you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
right? I am completely ignorant on my truck engine. I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
Like, stupid is putting gasoline in a diesel tank.
Right.
Well, you're putting gasoline in it,
Right.
right? But if you don't know the difference between gasoline and diesel, and that a diesel truck has to have diesel and a gas car has to have gas, if you don't know, you're probably going to grab the wrong handle,
Hmm.
right? Green versus black. Because I had to tell Karen when we got the diesel truck, and it's her first diesel truck. It's her
Right.
first, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go gas the truck up." I'm like, "You're gonna fuel the truck up with diesel.
Right.
You're not grabbing the black handle, you're grabbing the green handle." So
Hmm.
if you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
right? But if I say, "Hey, you need to fill it up with diesel," and that's the green handle, and you grab black, that's stupidity.
Right.
But the ignorant people are not dangerous, in my opinion, right?
Hmm.
because they don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
And they're willing to be educated. Like, roll down your window,
Hmm.
right? I don't have to roll, and they go, I have to roll down my window. Yes, for Pennsylvania v. Mims, and I go into the whole case law because it looks really good on body worn camera.
Right.
When you cite case law, it's U.S. Supreme Court case law and body worn camera,
Hmm.
it looks really, really good,
Right.
right? Because now you have an educated officer that's trying to educate and inform,
Hmm.
right? It's the same thing on the range, right? If somebody does something unsafe, you should probably presume that they didn't know better.
Right.
Instead of, I see range officers yelling and screaming at people
Right.
and demeaning them. They didn't willfully, they probably did not willfully do something unsafe.
Right.
They did something unsafe because they didn't know any better.
Hmm.
So, what is it an opportunity to do?
To educate.
Educate.
Hmm.
But you cannot educate somebody if you're yelling and screaming at them because you have no buy in at that point,
Right.
right? And there's no reason for it.
Hmm.
Now, as I tell my range officers, as I tell my range officer, I say, you can correct behaviors. What you cannot correct, you should not correct is attitudes.
Hmm.
So you're on a range and somebody does something unsafe and you try to correct them and educate them and they give you attitude. What's probably your best course of action? Pack your stuff up. Have a good day. And be respectful.
Hmm.
Pack your stuff up. You're no longer welcome here. Have a good day. I'm not leaving. Okay, so now you're trespassing. See
Right.
how there's no feelings anymore.
Right.
You're not hurting my feelings.
Hmm.
I'm telling you what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and there's no feelings about it.
Hmm.
And you're now being informed because you've been misinformed in your head.
Right.
And so now I'm going to properly inform you. The and the same thing with law enforcement. We have all these keyboard warriors, these keyboard commandos. They're saying these are your rights, these are your rights, these are your rights. Heard all the time. I know my rights. I'm like, you're about to be educating them in the
Yeah.
most expensive manner possible.
Right.
Right. And they go, I don't agree with you. I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
You're gonna have your day in court,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna smash you like the bug that you are.
Hmm.
Not because I'm some vindictive guy.
Right.
It's because I have the law and the facts and circumstances of what actually occurred on my side, not
Right.
feelings,
Right.
right? And your version of the truth. That's why I don't like truth. I hate the
Hmm.
word truth because
Right.
truth is subjective. Facts are facts,
Right.
right? That's why I deal in facts,
Hmm.
right? That's why your company, that's how you develop, going back to the training, that's how you develop a legally defensible training.
Hmm.
You base everything on quantifiable data and facts. And it has to be obviously generally acceptable quantifiable data. But at the end of the day, it has to you have to deal with that. So the misinformed people are the ones are the dangerous ones because they're going out and spewing that message.
Hmm.
And who is the average citizen to challenge that information from that person that is in a position of authority,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's real or not,
Right.
right?
Perceived authority.
Perceived authority, right?
Right.
Like I have a million YouTube followers, so now I'm an authority on this,
Hmm.
dude. No,
Right.
and I see it, and like my concealed carry class. A lot of what I'm teaching now is actually dispelling myths.
Hmm.
Like, oh, AR-15 stands for assault rifle. Nope.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, is that your opinion? No, I can pull the patents up right now.
Right.
Armor light rifle model 15. There it is. Well, I've been told my whole life. I'm like, well, you've been misinformed your entire life, right?
Yeah. Well, if you were told your whole life that the fucking sun rises in the west,
Correct.
guess what?
Right. It ain't first, your last. Damn, I was high when I said that, Bobby.
You know?
Right? It's like, and it's, and I don't have any feeling. I don't have any feeling attached to that, right?
Right.
Like, I don't get upset when I hear, I had yesterday, I had one of the students. I actually asked them in the beginning of the class, what does AR and AR-15 stand for? And I had one of them say assault rifle,
Hmm.
and I didn't get upset, right? If
Right.
somebody calls a ammunition feeding device a clip instead of a magazine, I don't get upset about it
Right.
because why? I get so upset when I hear that. Why? They don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
They either don't know or they've been misinformed.
Misinformed. Right.
And once you are willing to provide that information,
Hmm.
right? Usually do it in a way that they solicit your information and not unsolicited advice.
Right.
Because sometimes you offer that unsolicited advice, you're like, I didn't ask for your opinion in this matter. That's
Right.
another thing that's that's really getting people wrapped around the axle
Hmm.
is people are offering their opinions. And you just want to look at them and go, I didn't, not only was your opinion not wanted,
Right.
it's definitely unwelcome now,
Yes.
right? So how about this? Just keep it to yourself.
Hmm.
Like you're spending this much time on Facebook and YouTube and commenting on somebody.
Hmm.
I tell people, just keep scrolling, just keep scrolling, just keep scrolling.
Right.
Why? Like,
Hmm.
there's no point.
Hmm.
Like, I posted a photo I got Camille, my daughter,
Hmm.
a Smith and Wesson M&P 1522. So it looks
Right.
like an AR-15, but it
Does.
shoots 22
Yes.
long rifle.
Hmm.
Put a suppressor on it, and I put a red dot on it. She loves that gun.
Right.
So I took a picture of that with the USCCA AR-15 fundamentals book. Really
Hmm.
good book on learning AR-15s, right?
Hmm.
And then a box of ammo. And I posted on social media on Facebook on a local like a local what is it group local group. Holy crap! The firestorm. Oh my God! You're arming children with an AR-15. It's not even an AR-15.
Right.
It's a 22. But like, and Karen's like, and I just keep thumbs upping people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Karen's like, why are you even giving them a thumbs up? Like, because it's helping the algorithm.
Right.
Like, babe, let's do a little. I said, let's do a social media thing. And
Right.
I'm like, what? Just keep scrolling. There's
Hmm.
things that I see on Facebook all the time that I disagree with.
Right.
I have to be on social media.
Hmm.
It's part of the company. It's
Yeah.
that.
Same here.
It's
I
a
mean,
reality, right? Right. You have to be on. People are
right.
like, I hate. I'm going to go into business and I am not going to use social media. I'm like, ooh,
Good luck with that.
good
Hmm.
luck, man. Right? I mean, if you want to try it, try it.
Yeah.
But no, it's just, and that's the big thing that I'm seeing is, yeah, they're raised. There's a portion, I think a small portion that are
Hmm.
raised that the police are bad, and there's really nothing we can do
Hmm.
to um to change that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a generational like hate,
Hmm.
right? And then you have the people that were just weren't raised right. That's not going to change.
Hmm.
That's just not going to change. There's just bad. There's bad.
Hmm.
It's weird because I have a couple of friends of mine that are dealing with some their children there, and I get the phone call like, "Hey, legally, what can I?" I don't give legal advice, but it's like, "Hey, have you experienced this as a cop? Right?
Hmm.
How have you navigated this as a cop with children?" Because
Hmm.
I see good parents with shitty kids,
Right.
right? I see shitty parents with great kids, shitty parents with shitty kids, good parents with good kids, like every permutation you can
Right.
think of. And there's no and it's sad there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah.
It's as random as throwing dice.
Hmm.
But then you have so we're not going to change that. So we're not going to change that the parenting thing. I mean, for the most part,
Right.
you're just always going to deal with shitty people. You're not going to change somebody that hates law enforcement generationally speaking.
Hmm.
The only chance we have of really changing is to misinform people,
Hmm.
right? Is educating the misinformed people,
Hmm.
right? And correcting behaviors before they become attitudes.
Hmm.
That's it. That's the only chance we have. And again, that's where it comes back to, okay, we need to train law enforcement
Hmm.
on what they can and can't do,
Right.
right? What is their constitutional bounds of their duties, or
Hmm.
even from a policy perspective,
Right.
how to make better decisions, because that's what's killing us. I mean,
Hmm.
and part of the disdain for law enforcement, and this is gonna strike at a lot of guys, but it's a reality. Part of it is undeserved,
Hmm.
right? But then there's some that's very well deserved, right? Like when they chased that kid down in Memphis and killed him, beat him to death,
Right.
completely, completely unacceptable,
Right.
right? Taser, taser, taser,
Right.
shoots the guy, completely unacceptable.
Hmm.
I'm not here to protect dirty or bad cops or people making bad decisions. But if they do the right thing and an accident happens, that's an
Hmm.
accident,
Right.
right? It's if something happens, like it's a dirty world, right? It's
Hmm.
it's if the officer's intention was to do the right thing and they did the right thing and something bad happened courtesy of that, that's the price you pay when you run from the police,
Right.
right? That's just the price you pay. And
Hmm.
and sometimes the offender pays for it, right? Because they get hurt more than otherwise the officer intended, or
Hmm.
sometimes the officer gets hurt,
Right.
right? Chris, lost his life that night doing everything right.
Mhm.
And he still paid the ultimate price.
Right.
Right. And Camille hit me with something just it was about 6 months ago. And she looked at my wristband I've worn it for numerous years. And she goes, Dad, she's so smart. I mean, you've met Camille. She's friggin' smart,
Right.
wicked smart. She goes, Dad, you wear that bracelet. So is it true that Chris went to work that day, kissed his wife and his kids goodbye, and next morning they never saw him again? I'm like, yes, Camille, that's reality.
Mhm.
And then she kind of looks at me and she's going, I have another question. I'm like, oh, don't ask it.
Yeah.
Don't ask. I'm driving. I'm like, mother, there's cutting onions in this truck. Who's cutting onions? She's like,
Right.
so you mean to tell me like all those nights, Dad, that you kissed me goodnight and you went to work?
Mhm.
That could have been the last. That could have been the last time you did that. And I'm like, yeah, Camille, that's reality.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm really glad you're not doing that anymore. And I'm like, son of a, I'm like, oh God, right? I'm like, all
Right.
right, who's cutting these damn onions, right?
Right.
But we have a large segment of people
Mhm.
that are willing to put that badge on every day and go out and do that.
Right.
And it takes a special breed of person to do that,
Mhm.
right? I don't miss a damn day of law enforcement, honestly. Some days I'm like, That's cool. And then I'm like, well, that's stupid. I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I don't miss it.
Mhm.
But I'm very thankful for what it's given me and allowing me to do what I do. But like, you guys understand, like you sign up for it.
Mhm.
Like if you like like if Hunter was younger, right, and you go into work, you signed up for that. He didn't,
Right.
right? We sign up for it. Our families don't,
Mhm.
right? They don't sign up for that. They may have an input, but it's ultimately your decision to do that, right?
Right.
To put on that badge and that gun to go do that job, an insatiably, and let's just call it for what it's worth, an impossible job.
Right.
It's an impossible job, right? You're
Mhm.
damned if you do. You're damned if you don't.
Right.
You have split seconds to make a decision. We have a US Supreme Court case law that delineates what how we judge force, and yet these guys get on the social media and everything and completely go against it.
Right.
Well, if I was a cop, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, you're not a fucking cop.
Right.
And even if you are a cop, guess what? You weren't there.
Yeah.
So let's seek first to understand, then be understood.
Mhm.
Stephen Covey said that the best. And at the end of the day, we're like Grant, that the case law I'm mentioning is Grant v. Connor,
Mhm.
right? Officers must make split second decisions based on rapidly evolving intense circumstances, based on the totality of the circumstances in which its hindsight is not 2020. That's been bright light case law since the 1970s.
Right.
And yet we don't use that very framework that we're supposed to judge an officer's action. We don't use that because it's inconvenient. It
Mhm.
requires big words. It requires critical thinking. So
Right.
we just make up a metric and watch a video.
Yeah.
I get this all the time. Josh, watch the video.
Right.
What do you think?
Well,
Or
it's not that simple.
and in my expert work, right? I do legal expert work where I advise attorneys on cases, use of
Mhm.
force, firearms, and ballistics. Those are
Mhm.
my areas of expert, right? I just got a homicide case, a murder case, and the case file
Mhm.
was 396 pages.
Wow.
And the autopsy report was 120 pages. The and there was 2 terabytes worth of body worn camera footage. So, do you think after reading all of that, watching all of it, looking at the autopsy, looking at that, do you think I have a pretty clear picture of what occurred?
Yes.
But if I just watch the body worn camera footage,
Yeah.
I get it all the time. Tell me what you think, Josh.
Right.
The next question I ask is, where's the police reports? Where's the these are friends, and they're not attorneys, but they're friends.
Mhm.
You're the legal expert, Josh. You know your way around that. Where are they? And they go, we don't have them.
Mhm.
So I say, how about we wait for all the here? Wait for it. All the facts to
Right.
come out,
There you go.
right? And they go, it doesn't look good. I'm like, it shouldn't. It's called violence.
Right.
It never looks good,
Mhm.
right? Violence never looks good.
Mhm.
But I mark my words, everybody loves it.
Right.
How many people tuned in for Mike Tyson and Jake Paul?
Yeah.
Elderly abuse.
Right.
Why was the Roman Coliseum so successful? Why is the UFC so
Hmm.
successful? And you mean to tell me you're on the on the freeway, you see red and blue lights, you don't slow down to see what's going on? What are you
Hmm.
looking for? Gore, violence.
Right.
You're doing it. So
Yeah.
just don't don't patronize me.
Right.
Don't virtue signal me like that. I know it.
Mhm.
So stop. Let's dispense with it. And it's not a night. And it so if you're not willing to do it, right, and you hire people to do it, then we have to trust that they're intent. That's the thing. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing that bothers me when we judge force. And I've seen some police departments do it is we have to first start with the officer was acting. We start with the officer was acting reasonable.
Mhm.
Then are there facts and circumstances? Because
Mhm.
I think somewhere in that that when you get arrested, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
I think that's somewhere,
Right.
right? So why aren't our officers given the benefit of the doubt? Then when the facts come out, if the
Mhm.
officers' actions were not in line with policy, not in line with the laws, not in line with the Constitution,
Mhm.
then what should we do? Hammer them,
Right.
or hold them accountable.
Yes.
In the world of transparency, I love when people use that word. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, don't use words you can't spell, much less use in a sentence.
Yeah.
Like, don't it's don't if you want to truly use transparency, tell me
Mhm.
and show it and do it,
Right.
but don't use the word.
Mhm.
And then I see something that's completely not transparent.
Right.
That's the most Christian way I can say it. So I think that's the big paradigm shift we have to make,
Mhm.
and it's going to be slow going,
Right.
um, because it was generationally inbred in this all this stuff,
Mhm.
and it's going to take generationally to get out of it. Just like
Yeah.
weight loss, right?
Yeah.
People are like, man, it's taking me forever to lose weight. I'm like, it took you forever to put on the weight.
Right. It didn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Right. Like
You didn't eat a piece of pie, wake up 30 pounds heavier. Yeah.
exactly, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, I think that's the I guess the roundabout way of that
Right.
concept.
Yeah. It's just an unfortunate fact of where we are now in our society that people are so judgmental about things that they don't have any real idea about. They don't
Sure.
know what they're talking about, but they're judging situations based on things that they don't understand. They're not there. They couldn't have made those decisions themselves,
No.
right? Um, and beyond that, if the people, not on the law enforcement side, but the people that are interacting with, had had a different upbringing, a different perspective, a
Mhm.
different respect level for the people they were dealing with,
Yeah.
those interactions wouldn't be the way they are to begin with.
Well, you're right, and I think it starts with a lack of respect for authority. And I'm not talking
Yeah.
about authority in the matter of detainments and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
like I fly all across this country.
Hmm.
When has Josh ever gone up to the cockpit door, knock on the door, and go, "Hey, give me a status briefing on the flight"?
Right.
Because I have no business
Hmm.
being there.
Right.
Oh, because I bought Microsoft Flight Simulator in 1995, right? Flew a Cessna 172
Right.
on a computer game that now this qualifies me to knock on the cockpit door
Hmm.
to get a flight briefing from the captain.
Right.
Who are you?
Hmm.
Bye.
Yeah.
Right? It's so, but people, right?
Hmm.
For whatever reason, in the law enforcement spectrum, and even in the fire spectrum,
Hmm.
will pontificate about subjects they have honestly no business
Hmm.
talking about.
Right.
Right? I mean, and I do the USCCA instructor class,
Hmm.
right? I do the USCCA instructor class, and the thing is like the bad thing about the great thing about it is it's a great class. I love teaching it,
Hmm.
but like but a lot of these fire instructors, there's a lot of fire instructors out there that, in my professional opinion, should not be fire instructors. I
Right.
mean, you've seen it, Rico.
Yeah.
Hunter's seen it. My entire staff is handpicked
Hmm.
for a reason,
Right.
right? they're superstars
Hmm.
in whatever they are, right?
Right.
And I develop them, of course. I do instructor development. I do quarterly instructor development because we all of our instructors have to prescribe to the concept of always a student
Right.
and sometimes a teacher.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, they all come with strengths. But I don't hire turds. I don't
Right.
because I don't pay turd wages either.
Yeah.
But like, but at the end of the day, there's a large spectrum of people. And Beth Alcazar, she wrote the women's curriculum. She's an amazing individual for the USCCA. She said it best one time. She's like, for whatever reason, firearms instruction is one of the only um, like outlets, I guess, or careers that if you take a couple classes, now all of a sudden it's the next step is teaching it. I mean, I've been scuba certified for
Right.
like 6 years. Karen's
Yeah.
got over thousands of dives.
Yeah.
The next step is not for us to open up a dive shop and teach
Right.
it, right? Uh, but say I get flight certified, right? Say
Yeah.
because my next endeavor is I want to get a
Hmm.
single engine rating. So like say I pass the ground school, pass the flight school, and I become an FAA certified, single engine pilot.
Hmm.
The next step isn't teaching
Right.
right then and there,
Yeah.
right? It's I have to get flight hours and I have to fly specific flights and do all that, and I have to show some level of competency
Right.
to become a flight instructor.
Uh-huh.
Fire instructors, for the most part, fire instructor.
Hmm.
I was in the military. Like Hunter, how much pistol training did you receive in the military? Three? No, zero? Zero? Zero, right? Not even a little bit, right? I was in the military, so I can teach pistol.
Yeah. No.
You've not even taken a pistol class.
Right.
So like I've had this where people are like, I want to be an instructor. Okay.
Hmm.
And I'm not asking for credentials.
Hmm.
Like my instructors have insane credentials, right? But first and foremost, I look for a person as an instructor, right? For my company and even preferably, but all the USCCA instructors I certify,
Hmm.
not all of them work for me,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
I get to pick
Right.
a leader. Like Jody
Hmm.
was in my instructor class. I never knew who it was. I
Yeah.
thought it was a girl
Right.
when I saw him on there.
When I saw the name on the list, it's like,
I'm like, Mark, and he goes, no, Jody. I'm like, I'm an asshole. And so, but like, I got to same thing with Melinda,
yeah.
right? I get to handpick them and you get to
Hmm.
use as recruiting class. That's not my purpose. I do it, but
Right.
if I see a diamond, you
Right.
know, why not
Yeah.
pluck it out of the dirt?
So here again, I'm going to compliment you, whether you like it or not,
Well,
that you have done an extraordinary job of bringing together people that are not only capable, but are very intelligent, very uh, good at communicating and doing things that are above and beyond what just an average person could do. You have assembled a group of people together
thank you.
that are extraordinary, right? And these are people that, like, anybody could look at and say, that is an exceptional person. That is not just a run of the mill person. That is not a baseline person. This is somebody that is like,
Mediocrity.
above and beyond, you know, and you have done that not just because you wanted to make your company successful, because you recognize that these people are truly exceptional and that they are going to benefit not just you, but the people that they interact with and
Yeah.
everybody down the line from there.
So I use three criteria,
Hmm.
and I got it from Matt Schneider. He was one of my business development coaches early on. I have three criteria when I look at somebody
Hmm.
to potentially come work for Guardian, right?
Right.
Hungry, humble, smart.
Hmm.
Are they hungry to learn? Are they hungry to work? Are they hungry to be an exceptional person, right?
Right.
Are they humble, right?
Hmm.
Do they come with humility? Do they come with an open mind or a shut mind,
Hmm.
right? Are they always a student and sometimes a teacher, right? Because I call it my 3 R's of training:
Hmm.
recent, relevant, realistic,
Right.
right? So I may have an instructor that was a Green Beret in Vietnam and has never taken a class before. And if you're using the concepts in warfare,
Hmm.
right, what you learn in Vietnam or Afghanistan to where you are now, it's not realistic, it's not relevant, and
Right.
definitely ain't recent,
Yeah.
right? Because it's Vietnam. Like, and it's not to poo poo on his service.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate that,
Hmm.
right? But to be an instructor, like when was the last class you attended as a student?
Right.
So hungry. They have to be humble,
Hmm.
right? Now, does it take a certain level of swagger to be an instructor? I think so. I have swagger. I know that.
Right. Yeah.
Right now, my swagger is definitely more swagger than a lot of other people,
Right.
right? John Daly's like, I love John Daly, like as the golfer.
Hmm.
Like he's overweight, he drinks, smokes,
Yeah.
and he can bomb that freaking ball down the fairway and nobody can talk smack about it,
Right.
right? So not like from he's maybe not the best professional, but it's like it's but when you meet John Daly, you know what you're getting.
Right.
You know what you're getting with John Daly. So
Hmm.
and then the last one you have to be smart,
Hmm.
right? And I'm not talking about IQ. I'm not talking about. I'm not looking at degrees. I'm not looking at any of that.
Hmm.
I'm looking at a person like you either have it or you don't. The
Hmm.
ISMA, right, or the the ability to talk to people and connect with people,
Hmm.
right? And they have to be smart. And it's and because it takes a lot to do this
Hmm.
and to be successful at it.
Right.
And so I look for a person that's hungry, humble, and smart
Hmm.
because I can teach them the knowledge. I can teach them where the front sight is and the rear sight is and how to pull a trigger.
Right.
You know, Nutless Monkey can do that. So, um, but you can't teach people how to connect with other people. You
Hmm.
either have it
Right.
or you don't.
Hmm.
Um, so all those qualities, you either have it or you don't.
Hmm.
Um, and then then I look at okay, um, how do they perform? Can they physically do the task?
Hmm.
Okay, yes, they can physically do that. And then the next part is like is the and it's the more and once the more and more crucial one is do they fit in our culture,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So I want to meet their families. I want to get to know them, right,
Hmm.
as a person.
Right.
Um, so hungry, humble, smart, and then what do the credentials do?
Hmm.
The credentials just bolster
Right.
how fucking awesome they are,
Yeah.
right? But everybody looks at the credentials first, and then all that stuff afterwards, and I think that's a
Hmm.
mistake
Yeah.
because we've all seen that person. I'm sure this has never happened to you, Rico or Hunter. That you look on paper, this guy's a rock star,
Right.
and then a turd walks in the room, and you're like,
Right.
because they look good on paper,
Hmm.
but then you're looking at a turd.
Yeah. So does communism.
Correct. Right. Right. It's good on paper. Equal. Right.
Right.
Everybody gets equal pay. It doesn't work.
Hmm.
Right. And we have empirical data that it doesn't work. It's not. That's
Right.
not an opinion.
Hmm.
That's a fact. It doesn't
Yes.
work. So at the end of the day, like that's the thing, and that's where I look at my. So you're like, how do I become a guardian instructor? Do I have to be in the military? Right. There's a substantial amount of guys that are not in the military in my
Right.
group.
Right.
Doesn't make them any less.
Hmm.
But what they cannot do, right, is go teach military tactics
Right.
because they've never walked in that, right?
Hmm.
I have my law enforcement instructors, right?
Hmm.
Can I, civilian instructor, go to like Huntsville and teach a low light vehicle class? I don't recommend that.
Probably not a good idea.
You will literally get booed off the stage. So like when Huntsville Police Department asked me to do a sniper class down in Huntsville and open up to their others, you think I'm teaching that class?
No.
Hell to the no. I got Mark frickin' Spicer to do it.
That's where Mark comes in.
And it's hilarious because the SWAT commander's like, well, so you're because I've been teaching all the classes down there and I brought other instructors with me, but I've been leading the charge in Huntsville.
Right.
And it's an amazing facility, great people.
Hmm.
I love going down there. It's a super cool town because it's all NASA and
Hmm.
Boeing and stuff like that. I love going down there. So I've been going down there doing pistol rifle training, and they said I need a sniper school. So I set up with Mark, and the SWAT commander calls me like, "Hey, I got to talk about something." I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "So I see your flyer. It's Mark Spicer guy. You're not teaching it." I'm like, "No, I'm not qualified to do that. I mean, I could probably teach it, but it ain't gonna be good.
Right.
And do what you do best. Outsource the rest." So
Hmm.
we brought Mark under the banner, and I'll tell you what happened when we met Mark. So brought him under. And he's like, "Is he good?" So then when he asked that, I already posted on YouTube of Mark's interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox News
Right.
talking about assassination plot one in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. So he's brought in and he's an expert. He was an expert witness in the DC sniper trials.
Okay.
So his resume is
Right.
bulletproof.
Yeah.
So I sent him the video
Hmm.
of him being interviewed by Laura Ingraham on national syndicated there. And he goes, "Holy shit, that's the guy." I'm like, it's the guy you're sending down there. I'm like, don't ever fucking ask me that question again.
Yeah.
I said, if they're wearing a Guardian polo,
Right.
they're the best,
Yeah.
period. and that's not, that's not, I
It's
hope
not
that,
hyperbole at that
no,
point.
they're the best. They're the best at what they do.
Mhm.
And so some people ask me like, hey, Josh, hey, how do I buy one of those polos? Like, you don't.
You don't.
It's just
Mhm.
like asking, how do you buy an authentic police uniform?
Right.
You don't.
You don't buy a
No,
Green Beret.
correct. Right. You don't buy that. It's like it's an instructor uniform.
Yeah.
That's a uniform item. You earn that,
Mhm.
right? By being the best. And so he's like, so the SWAT commander like, holy shit. I'm like, don't ever ask that question again.
Mhm.
I said, whoever I send down there, whether it's me or somebody else, they're just as good as me, if not better.
Mhm.
I said, now I'll come down there and I'll drink some whiskey, but I ain't teaching the fucking class.
Right.
But then now I've got another class going on at the same time. So
Mhm.
now Guardian, right, is going to have like three classes going on at the same time at the same range.
Nice.
That's to me, that's dream come true for me,
Mhm.
right? Because when we start doing operations in multiple different locations,
Mhm.
right, that's what your buddy just couldn't do,
Mhm.
right? Because he didn't have a team, he didn't have a vision to go, how do I step out of having, because once somebody told me this, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king?
Yeah.
You can't have both.
Mhm.
Do you want control or do you want growth?
Mhm.
Because you can't have both. So which is it? Because if I'm rich, I can appoint myself king.
Right.
Like I'm a king of this place. Right.
Right.
So it's so no. And then when I met Mark through Brian, right?
Mhm.
He's like, hey, we're gonna meet Mark Spicer. He really wants to teach you. And I know Mark. I knew Mark through the world. And I'm like, Mark Spicer wants to come teach with Guardian.
Right.
And so he comes in. Well, of course, we meet at a bar, drink a pint because he's British,
Yeah.
as you well know. He can drink some pints. And he's like, "Hey, mate." He's like, "Here's my resume." Like a fucking formality.
Mhm.
It's like I already know who he is, and
Right.
Brian. He's vetted by Brian, so you're.
Yeah.
And I know his skill set. And and he hands me his resume. I'm like, that's cool. And then he hands me a 2-page document,
Mhm.
and it has the seal of the Jordanian royal family on it.
Wow.
I'm like, what the? I'm like, am I getting subpoenaed for the Jordanian army? What
Yeah.
the hell's going on? And it's a personal recommendation letter from Mr. Mark Spicer from the Crown Prince of Jordan.
Wow.
He's like, would this help, mate? I'm like, you're fucking hired, dude. Like, like,
Right. Yeah.
but like, he's got a letter of recommendation for his services rendered to the Jordanian
Yeah.
army and teaching their guys from the crown. This is the cousin or something
Mhm.
of King Abdullah, the king of Jordan.
Right.
That's just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll keep this in your file. Like,
Right.
okay, that's the kind of
Mhm.
measure. And then we have so many different guys. We have Lee who's in San Diego.
Right.
The guy's innovating. Like I love what
He
he's doing.
really is.
He's
Yeah.
so innovating, and
Yeah.
I love Lee. Like he's off the wall.
Right.
And I remember the day that he shut down Gunfighter, and we're
Mhm.
at Gun Prom having quite a bit of whiskey, and and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey man, I'm shutting Gunfighter down." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And Gunfighter Tactical was like, I mean, that was a big mainstay in San Diego, but because
Mhm.
California sucks when
Right.
it comes to gun stuff, they're getting pushed out. And I said, "Well," and I've seen him the way he talks to people,
Mhm.
hungry, humble, smart,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Possessing the talent. I see him shoot,
Mhm.
and I see him talk to people. I said, "Have you ever thought about being an instructor, man?" And he's like, "Well, I kind of do it now." I'm like, "I think you should just open up a business, man, and whatever you do, I'll help you along the way." And he's like, "You would help me?" I'm like, "Of course I would."
Right.
And I'm going to bring you under my banner. And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "That's the whiskey talking." And I'm like, "This, mark my words. I'm going to call you tomorrow when I'm sober,
Yeah.
and I'll remember this fucking conversation."
Yeah.
So he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, let's make it happen. Whatever I can do."
Mhm.
And then right then and there, he's in that
Mhm.
class. He's in the class,
Yeah.
and with his guys. And I'm like, he's like, holy shit. Like, and he's calling me all the time. And then he sent
Mhm.
me this awesome letter that I have in my office and it has it's a sterling silver with his input, with an imprint on, for belly training. And it's just thank you letter. And I'm like, I have to laminate it. Cried my guts out. I'm like,
Right.
I'm getting soft. I feel like a menopausal woman some
Uh,
days. But no, and I have an amazing team. I have,
mhm.
it's just great.
Mhm.
And we're changing a lot of stuff up, and the influence is growing. I might as well announce it. I'm running for, so I'm on the board for Silent Witness,
Mhm.
Arizona. So this is the tipster line that. So I'm the only one of the few only law enforcement officers, former law enforcement officers on the board. So I do that. We just did our charity golf tournament that was wildly successful. And then I'm running for board for the International Association of Law Enforcement Fire Instructors. So
Uh-huh.
hopefully by next year I'll be a board member of ILFE and shaping that. So it's good, man.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
So just to kind of bring it full circle, we talked
Yeah,
about where you started
yeah,
with your law enforcement and Chandler PD
yeah.
to all the things you've kind of developed along the way, all the ideas and the concepts that you've embraced,
Sure.
and where that has brought you now. And the delta between here and there is extraordinary, you know? And again, that is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why I think you were just an exceptional person and why I love talking with you and interacting with you
Whiskey
because
talking. Oh, man.
no, because
Appreciate it.
you have done an extraordinary amount in a very short period of time, you know, and that isn't even
Justifiably, yes, I would say so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that
You feel
isn't
that way.
but that isn't even the end of it. This is not the apex of where you're going to be. This is just one more step in your evolution
This
and
is
the
just the
evolution
beginning.
of or guardian, right?
Yeah.
You know?
This is just the beginning. I mean, it's and so I have to remind myself because I do like day in and day out. Like
Hmm.
I put on the face of optimism and entrepreneurship, but some days it's really lonely. It's very
Right.
lonely.
Right.
Super lonely. I mean, it's I don't like to say oh it's lonely at the top, but it's a lonely. It can be a lonely affair when you're left with your own thoughts. I'm like
Hmm.
I'm responsible for this company, and then I'm responsible for 12 other guys, right?
Hmm.
I'm responsible for, like Tim's son, Colby just got him huge like this is the kind of stuff that I have to deal with, right?
Right.
Tim was going to teach, I think he just got it done. Tim was slated to teach my director of medical operations,
Right.
Tim Freund, just an insatiably amazing person. I've known him the longest, I think. I think I've known him for close to 15 years.
Okay.
Um, and he can talk his way around Green Beret medics, and I mean, he's
Right.
using six-syllable Latin words. I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, whatever that is,
Right.
the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And
Hmm.
so he was supposed to teach a basic life support class for a chiropractic office,
Hmm.
and he calls me up at like 7 in the morning, and I'm like, hey Tim, what's up? And he goes, hey man, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to teach that class tonight. So all I did was set up the business side with the chiropractic office, and we got it through the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce because we're
Hmm.
members of them as well, and he's like, I don't know if I can teach a class tonight. It's like at 5. I said, hey
Hmm.
man, what's up? And he goes, so Colby, our son, was involved in a motorcycle accident, and he's currently in a coma.
Wow.
And he's still in a coma. He's still in ICU, right? Even to this day. And this was like 4 months ago. He's been in ICU for 4 months,
Jesus.
and it's a life altering thing. And I don't mean to put Tim's business out there, but this is the kind of stuff that keeps me up. And I'm like, it's killed me because Tim is such a great guy. Heather, his mom, and Heather's a flight nurse. Like Heather and Tim are just like some of the best people you'll ever meet.
Hmm.
Um, and Colby had that tragic accident, and um, he's like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I may. I'll try to make it. I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not making the class. I'm texting the chiropractor that you had a family emergency. He's like, well, what if he gets upset? I'm like, then I'll refund his money.
Right.
And I don't want to work with a guy like that.
Yeah.
I said, plain and simple. I said, if he doesn't understand like what's going on, then
Yeah.
he can
That's
get
not somebody I want to be involved with anyway.
yeah. I don't want his money.
Yeah.
It's blood money. I
Hmm.
said, but I'm telling you, you're not teaching the class. Well, no, I think I can do it. I'm like, you're not doing it. Like
Hmm.
families first. That's the way it is.
Right.
And but and he's just going through some really tough times on that end.
Hmm.
And I have other instructors that are going through tough times, and it gets lonely sometimes because sometimes I don't have any. It's hard because I don't want
Right.
to burden my guys with
Yeah.
my issues. But when it gets lonely, I'm like, then I just have to realize like 6 years has been a long time. It's been a
Hmm.
long, and I've gone through a lot in 6 years, a
Hmm.
lot.
Right.
And it's good, bad, and ugly, and a lot of ugly times. But I realize I'm like we've built a lot.
Mhm.
And like when we really get down to the minutia of where Guardian was,
Mhm.
right, and where we are now, and the vision that we have for the future, it's scary good. I mean,
Mhm.
it's scary, but it's scary good.
Right.
It's kind of just straight up fucking scary. But it's really good. And like I have Karen is just so understanding.
Mhm.
Like last night, I went to Sergio's party, and you know, Karen's like, "What time are you going to be home?" When I get she doesn't she's not one of those wives that are like, "When are you going to be home?" She knows I'm teaching,
Right.
and she knows that I like to talk, and I also let in my after actions, I let my students talk.
Right.
I tell them like, I've been talking all day or all week, doing a lot of talking. So now this is your opportunity
Mhm.
to speak, right? Feedback, comments, questions. It's an open forum
Right.
to talk. And sometimes they talk a lot. And it's
Mhm.
awesome because it's very positive in nature,
Mhm.
and our Google reviews and everything reflect how awesome of a job we are doing. Not
Mhm.
me, we are doing as Guardian. Um, but I have to really realize that how blessed I am to do what I absolutely love. I
Mhm.
really do. I love what I do.
Yeah.
As Karen says, are you gonna go to Huntsville and play guns? Like, yep, I'm gonna go play guns, babe. I literally get to
Yeah.
I get to play guns. Like
Right.
I literally get to do what kids dream to do.
Mhm.
Like I live sometimes I live in a freaking kid fantasy.
Right.
Like I want to be a dinosaur. I want to play with guns all day. I'm literally like
Right.
I get to do that, and
Yeah.
it we talked about it earlier. Like I get to see firsthand the impact that I make, that
Mhm.
personally I make. This is a personal thing with Josh,
Mhm.
but Guardian is that conveyance, right? Back to the entrepreneurship thing. So I get to be the entrepreneur that I am, and I get the fulfillment that I get, and the conveyance is Guardian, and then I get to fill my. I not only get to fill my guys internally,
Mhm.
right? My guys and fill their cups, and then but I also get to create new USCC instructors and hopefully replace those shitty instructors that are still out there, that are helping the anti-gun
Right.
culture,
Right.
when they say that our when these anti-gunners say we're a culture of Neanderthals, narcissists, knuckle draggers, right?
Right.
They think that we're that, and those instructors prove them right,
Yeah.
right? So when they say it, sometimes I'm like, and then I see, at SHOT Show, guys doing push-up contests and doing stupid stuff, Neanderthal-esque stuff,
Right.
instead of being professionals,
Mhm.
right? And listen, I'm all about tying one on, but we got to do it in the right
Yeah.
in the right circumstances. And so, like, they say that there it is, and I have to say, I never say it out loud, but they're right.
Yeah.
They're right.
Mhm.
So hopefully, the USCC instructors that I'm creating,
Mhm.
right, will slowly replace them,
Right.
and then now we can generationally change the 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 our standing
Mhm.
in our community, right? That we are an expertise driven career field.
Right.
But yes, it's fun, man. I love it. I just I can talk about it all day.
Right.
And Karen's just like, you just can't turn it off. I'm like, I'd rather burn out than fade away. Uh, concept. And
Right.
law enforcement wasn't fun anymore. It just
Yeah.
wasn't fun anymore, and I didn't feel fulfillment in the job, and
Mhm.
that I left on good terms. I handed my
Yeah.
letter of resignation in, got my retirement card, and it was good, but I
Mhm.
just didn't love it anymore.
Right.
And now this is like
Yeah.
I get to live a dream.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, again, I greatly appreciate you and everything that you've done, everything that you're doing. Um, I enjoy every moment of our interaction
I
together.
love hanging out with you
Yeah.
guys. I really do. I do. I love hanging out with
You
you
and
guys.
Karen are just absolutely amazing people,
It's
and
funny.
it's been a great blessing that I got to meet you guys, and that I've had an opportunity to like work with you and be a part of that organization,
Igualmente, my friend.
Yeah,
Absolutely, same
yeah.
for sure.
So, um, to the people that have never met Karen, let me just tell you, she is an extraordinary woman. She is intelligent and beautiful in every aspect. I don't mean just physically. I mean, she is a beautiful person. And Josh will be the first person to tell you that she that he is extraordinarily blessed to have her in his life. So I just wanted to throw that in on
Yeah,
top of
don't make her head
everything.
any bigger than her is. I would agree with that. Thanks, man, for
But
sure.
yeah, like I said, I love you both, and I'm so glad that you were able to come in today.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. I
So
was
yeah,
glad to be here. Thanks,
yeah,
guys. I appreciate it.
absolutely. All right. Well, on that happy note, I will say goodbye, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can now support the Non-Victim Nation by donating via listener support directly on Spotify. Remember, the story of your life is being written right now, and you are the hero.